Did you put Christmas on a credit card? Don't stress out about that extra holiday spending. SaveWithConrad.com can help you consolidate all of your high interest rate credit cards into one much lower monthly payment. SaveWithConrad.com has helped families just like yours save up to $800 a month. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket. And did I mention no payments until March? So don't make saving money a resolution next year. Make it happen today at SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm real good. We had a little bit of a technical issue this morning, so we're doing this a little later in the day. I appreciate you guys' patience, but I'm looking forward to this one. ATM Eric, it's all about that.
Yeah, it's about ATM Eric, the nickname you earned in the mid to late 90s. I'm really interested to talk about when you first heard that and what you thought of that. But before we do, we should talk about some news and notes of things that are happening right now. Eric, I'm sure you've seen the news. All In is now officially on sale. It's the AEW Stadium show. Of course, we've seen them do All In twice before in the UK. And then I guess really the origin story of AEW starts with All In back in 2018. What do you think, man? Arlington, Texas, Globe Life Field, where the Rangers play. What's it going to look like July 12th? It's going to be quite a sight, I'm sure.
Yeah, from what I've heard. By the way, I did see the on sale announcement that you did with Tony Schiavone and Ryan Danielson, and who was the other guy? Darby Allin was there.
Oh,
and that's all I saw. I didn't watch the whole thing, I don't think, but good for you. Good for you. How was your trip to Dallas?
It was great. It was easy. It was it's been a long time since I've done that. You know, I was there when it first started in Jacksonville, and then helped them do the first on sale for the first pay-per-view in Vegas. And that means StarCast is coming back. You know, StarCast was kind of created to support the original All In back in 2018, and we're jumping at the chance to do something fun in Texas. So stay tuned. That week is going to be more than just a stadium show, but it is indeed AEW's first stadium show, Eric.
Yeah, this was going to be a fun one. You know, congratulations to AEW. They broke $1 million, I think, advanced ticket sales. So that's nothing but a good thing. That's not a bad day, right? Nothing to make you frown. So it'll be fun to watch how the rest of it goes. That's a big stadium for a company that's, you know, struggling to draw, you know, in smaller markets and smaller buildings. So we'll see. You know, it's an event. That's the thing about a big show. Sometimes it's not even about creative. You know, don't get me wrong when I make this comparison. Please, I'm using it as an example to make a point. WrestleMania has become so big that while we all love when there's a great story like we've seen in the last year or two, even when there wasn't, WrestleMania still sold because it's an event. And to obviously a much lesser degree, same is true here. As you said, this is AEW's first stadium show.
Yeah.
And I think people that might not otherwise come to a television taping or a pay-per-view, premium live event, whatever you want to call it, if it's a big event in a cool venue, a lot of people just go for the excitement of live action in the venue.
Right.
It's great people watching. It's great entertainment, even if you're not a hardcore wrestling fan. But that's a big building. I don't know if there's enough of those kind of people to do it justice, but we'll find out.
We will find out. It's going to be an interesting year for professional wrestling in 2025. But before we get there, we're going out with a bang. Saturday night's main event is back this weekend. It's going to be live on NBC and on Peacock. It's this Saturday night, of course. And Eric and I are going to be live immediately following that show. So as soon as you turn off the main event, which is Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens, jump on over to 83weeks.com. Eric and I will be breaking it down, taking your questions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's totally free. It's YouTube, and we want to hear from you this Saturday night, immediately following Saturday night's main event. Man, Eric, have you seen the news? It looks like Jesse Ventura's coming back, possibly other legends. There's rumor and innuendo that a brother of yours may be there. What do you make of this report? Are you looking forward to this? Do you love the nostalgia of this?
I I think I'm looking forward to this more than anything I've looked forward to on television across the board, except for maybe Yellowstone in the beginning. I haven't looked forward to something like this in a long time. It's the retro vibe. If it was just another wrestling show, shoot me. But man, and from what I've just heard on social media, I think Jesse did an interview.
Yep.
At least I took it. I didn't read it closely, but I got the impression scanning it that even the lighting is going to be a little, bit of a throwback. And if they can recapture that 80s, 90s, early 90s vibe, fuck, it's going to be so cool. It will be really cool. And I think it'll blow people away because it'll bring in a lot, just like we were talking about with, the stadium show, something different, something cool. This is so different, and it's something for that lapsed wrestling fan. And we know there's, how many tens of millions of them are out there, right? There's just nothing in today's wrestling product that is going to get them to go back and check it out. But depending on the level of nostalgia in this show, this could do that. This could be a monster.
I think it will. I think this is leaning into what made the whole Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight so intriguing and so interesting, because people want to remember Mike Tyson the way he was. They're not really all that interested in seeing how he is now. But if we can sort of feel transported, and now it becomes an experience because everything looks and feels throwback, from the music to the graphics to the lighting to the entrance not being a giant LED board. It's going to be really, really cool to see. And I don't know if you saw or paid any attention, but Triple H posted a video with Cody Rhodes where he opened up a briefcase for one night only, and it glowed like in Pulp Fiction. We're led to believe, of course, that means for one night only, he's going to get to wear the Winged Eagle Championship, the classic Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart title. He's been campaigning for it. He wanted it to return. That is not going to hurt their Christmas rush for last night.
Oh my, that's exactly what I was thinking. Conrad, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, please.
This reminds me of when I first met my wife and we first started, shacking up a little bit. And one Sunday morning, I'm making her, we'd have fake crab legs and cheap champagne on Sunday mornings, brunch, right? Well, one Sunday morning, timing worked out. We're watching wrestling while I'm, feeding my wife fake crab legs and wanting her to catch a buzz on some champagne so we can have an amazing afternoon, late afternoon. Anyway, I digress. Whew. The memories, they just come back to you. But I said, I looked at my wife says, "Why are you watching this?" And I said, "Honey, because professional wrestling is the purest form of marketing there is."
Yes.
And this is an example of what I mean in, obviously a much bigger way now, but it's the same thing, man. When wrestling's cool, it's so cool. And good for Cody. And what a great way to make that feel special.
Yes.
One time.
I'm excited. I hope that, we see the tag titles used that way. I hope the Intercontinental titles that way. Like, make it all throwback. Not to be a downer. I hate to be that guy, but I do wish maybe more right now than ever that Howard Finkel was here to be a part of this. Can you imagine how great that would have been to see Mean Gene or Howard Finkel or Bobby Heenan? Like, if any of those three could have been there, it just makes it feel somehow even more like Saturday night's main event.
Not to get too far out there, but you know what? It probably won't be long before we do.
Yeah, with AI and all that.
With AI or, those holographics and technology. And I remember meeting some people back when I was still at Turner, when I was still at WCW. I had some people come to me that were setting up a studio in North Carolina. There was a point in time when there was a lot of film industry moving into North Carolina. The state subsidized it and had tax breaks. There was all kinds of reasons. And it's a great place to shoot on top of it. But these guys reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're working on something," because, I was in live action wrestling. they wanted to get my opinion on some of the stuff they were working on, just to pick my brain, to see my reaction. And I went and saw what they were doing, and it's nothing that compares to what we're doing today, but it was so far advanced back then. It was all to do with ways to use holographics and live action on television. And I bet you we'll be able to do it before long. And with AI, Howard or whomever, Gene, will probably be able to carry on a conversation with somebody. It's just crazy.
I know that I'm not supposed to think this way because, well, we know all the recent news. But the little kid in me, just thinking about programming this show and how excited I am to see it, I kind of wish I had gravelly Vince's voice over the top of it to get us started. I know it's not going to happen for obvious reasons.
Hey. They could AI that shit in.
Oh, they could. But
I know how to do that.
Yeah.
I figured that out. Yeah, that's kind of half-assed, risky, but the fact that they wouldn't let him do it himself is a punishment in a way. So
Yeah.
I think that should pass the Sting test.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen, but those old pay-per-views, man, they were so iconic with his voice, Royal Rumble and all that.
No doubt.
It was just really, really cool. And I don't know why it still stands out, but I think about Mean Gene and that silly open from Vince, and I think about Bobby, and I think about Howard, and I'm just excited for this, man. I can only assume that they're going to have the red, white, and blue look to the ring, and the blue aprons, and the old school guardrails, and the blue mats around the ring. Like, the nostalgia for this, if they do it right, they should sell so much Saturday night's main event merch, retro, merch from back in the day. Like, this is going to be a big bonanza for them. What an opportunity it is, right?
Well, you know what? They've probably, just with a little bit of social media they've done so far, they've probably already created an additional $50 million to $100 million in revenue from nostalgic belt sales. I mean, they're going to come out with new ones or different ones or position, whatever, but just the way they're using this one night only kind of thing and the story behind it, it's just they're creating a whole nother revenue stream, or an additional one, I should say.
Well, I'm excited to see it, and we know some of the card. Let's run through some of the matches right fast before we get into ATM Eric, or the myth that is ATM Eric. The main event, man, Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens for the WWE Championship. This has been a long time coming. I love to seeing the way they got this kicked off with that sort of fan cam footage from the parking garage. It felt big. It felt special. And now it's the first main event for the return to Saturday night's main event. What do you expect here?
Oh, I don't know, man. I haven't been watching it, so I can't tell you, Conrad, honestly.
Well, I got to tell you, the wrestling fan in me, who loved when the Genius and Mr. Perfect wrestled Hulk Hogan on Saturday night's main event. Do you remember seeing that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if you recall, afterwards, Mr. Perfect ran off with Hulk Hogan's title. He went to the backstage area with Mean Gene, and he took a hammer to the belt, the Winged Eagle. Man, if Kevin Owens somehow doesn't win that title and he winds up cracking Cody Rhodes' Winged Eagle with a hammer.
See, that's why I'd rather hear what you think is going to happen than what I think is going to happen, because you not only know what's going on, you've got this weird fucking memory, and you can remember details of shit that blow my mind. It's embarrassing, I've tried Prevagen and all the gimmicks. Every time I do something with you, it's like, how can he remember all that stuff and the details? It drives me nuts.
Well, dude, it was a big memory for me and most of our listeners. I mean, if they do something like that, it's going to be about as cool as it gets. We've also got the women's championship on the line. Liv Morgan and Io Sky. We'll see a triple threat heavyweight title match with Gunther, Finn Balor, and Damian Priest. And then a pretty interesting match, to say the least. I'm probably looking forward to this second most. Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre. I feel like everything these guys have done, they might be quietly two of the MVPs over the last couple of years with WWE. It feels like they've had one strong promo after another, one strong match after another. Everything they're in, whether it's a talking segment or whatever, it seems to deliver. These are two Two studs. I'm looking forward to that one.
I am as well. And it just, is it me? Or does Drew seem to be getting incrementally better, especially at promos, every time he opens his mouth?
Yes.
And I've been seeing that consistently. It's not like giant leaps and bounds because he was always started off being decent and he's gotten better over time, just reps and experience and comfort. But it just seems to me like every time I see him, he's in something that's a little deeper in terms of his narrative. It's got a little more intensity. It's a little bit more of a story. It's a little bit more of a journey than we typically get in a wrestling promo. It hits you different. And I've noticed he's been doing that consistently. Some people don't do that at all because it's harder. But he's been doing it consistently, and he seems to be getting better and better at it, which is probably why I'm noticing it, because we're seeing more and more of it, which they wouldn't do if it wasn't working. Protect your talent. Always protect your talent.
Well, something else you've got to protect is your household. And that's why Eric and I are proud to talk to you about a brand new sponsor here on the program, Stopbox. If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage likely fits into one of two frustrating categories. It's either locked away, safe, but out of reach in case of an emergency, or it's unsecured, which just leaves it vulnerable to anyone. But Stopbox USA saw the problem and designed a groundbreaking solution. It's called the Stopbox Pro. With the Stopbox Pro, you'll never have to choose between security and readiness again. Its ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast, reliable access when every second matters, without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time, so no power needed. And with Stopbox USA, you can finally have both security and readiness. This is a big deal because this mechanical keyless system means you don't have to fumble around for your keys. You never have to worry about your battery not working. So if your battery dies, your lock's not going to work. That's never a problem with Stopbox Pro. And our listeners are even going to get 10% off their entire order when you use our code 83weeks. They're going to give you a buy one, get one free offer on their Stopbox Pro too. That's 10% off and a free Stopbox Pro when you use the code 83weeks at stopboxusa.com. Eric, what'd you think of your Stopbox?
I am really impressed. In fact, so impressed that I shot a video. I think I did that yesterday. When it got to the house, I unboxed it, and it came with directions. I'm not a big fan of directions, and even I could figure it out within minutes. And those, where you place your fingers, that you can set your own combination, and it tells you how to do it. It's very, very easy. But I went and got a pistol out of the safe and put it in the lockbox, and literally it takes, I don't even know if you can measure how fast it is, but it's completely secure. And the reason I dig it, it's Lori and I just in the house, so we don't have to worry about it too much. But, I've got a grandson and I've got a son that I know has weapons in the house. So, yeah, cool thing, especially for Christmas. And you can get to it fast, man. Don't hesitate.
All the Stopbox products are made right here, proudly in the USA. They've got their own facility. And Stopbox also has a huge range of other products, like their vehicle safe, their chamber lock, and other essential gear to help protect you and your family. And for a limited time only, our listeners are getting a crazy deal. Not only do you get 10% off your entire order when you use our code 83weeks at stopboxusa.com, but they're also giving you that buy one, get one free for their Stopbox Pro. That's 10% off and a free Stopbox Pro when you use the code 83weeks at stopboxusa.com. Discover a better way to balance security and readiness with Stopbox. So, Eric, we know Saturday night's main event is this weekend. It's this Saturday night, and we know that you and I are going to be live right here immediately following the program at 83weeks.com. But we've also heard that the next episode of Saturday night's main event has already been announced. San Antonio, January 25th. That's kind of fun because, well, it was around that same date back in 1997 in San Antonio. They had the Royal Rumble. So they'll be about a week away from the Royal Rumble here. This might be said differently, the go-home major event, if you will, before the big pay-per-view known as Royal Rumble. This opportunity and the timing of these specials to be on NBC. It's sort of when college football has wound down. We had all the championship games last week, so it's not going to be as much competition this Saturday night. It's also right before the busiest shopping holiday of the year. And the next one is a week before the Royal Rumble. Like, the scheduling here is just amazing.
Yeah, not so coincidental. I think there's some smart people working together. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, you couldn't wish for a better opportunity. I mean, it's in terms of creating more awareness for your big event, Royal Rumble in this case.
Well, we're going to bring up some awareness from our pal, The Godfather. My buddy Cassio Kidd recently sat down with The Godfather over at adfreeshows.com. It was described to me as a pretty wild episode. I've seen a few clips online that are crazy, but let's take a listen to this clip. I want to see what you think, Eric.
When COVID hit, I agreed to come out to that Andre, the whatever battle royal.
Oh yeah.
And I was going to be, I was going to come out like as Kama, get eliminated. Then I was going to come back as Godfather, get eliminated. And then I was going to, I don't remember what that, I know that the last thing was Papa Shango, and the lights were going to go out, and everybody was, whoever's left was going to, and COVID hit. They didn't do it.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
And so that's probably the last time.
Man,
yeah, it was hard because they're so PG, and when they see me, the audience wants to yell, where's the hose?
Yes,
so.
exactly.
You might see me now that once they go on Netflix, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm still under contract. I'm still under contract with them, so
you got to get some of that.
I'm sure you might see me pop up.
How fun would that have been? Seeing Papa Shango, The Godfather, and Kama. I mean, I know we got to see Mick Foley do it that one time, but I kind of didn't even think that Godfather could have pulled the same bit. That's fun.
It would have been a blast. But I'll tell you what else. He is fun to listen to.
Yes, he is.
He is a great storyteller. He's got a great memory. He can get into the details, and he's so good at telling stories. It's really a fun listen.
Check it out. It's exclusive to adfreeshows.com. In fact, there's over 100,000 bonus hours of content that you can't find anywhere else. They're waiting for you too. Plus exclusive series from stars like Lex Luger, Tully Blanchard, David Crockett, Downtown Bruno, and so many more. Check it out right now at adfreeshows.com. Hey, let's talk about some other modern wrestling news before we jump into our topic today, the myth of ATM Eric. Did you see that it's been confirmed now that the WWE is going to receive a $7.1 million site fee? Thank you for bringing this show to our community. Here's $7.1 million. That's not the WrestleMania site fee. That's the SummerSlam site fee. Goodness gracious. This is a whole new ball game for WWE in 2025, is it not?
It's just staggering. I mean, how high is up? I mean, how high is up with this company? They're not even getting close to leveling off. Every time we turn around, it's some big strategic move. It's, seems like monthly we're hearing about revenue records being broken, attendance records being broken, and there's just so much going on there constantly. It's amazing to me.
They're getting $5 million from Las Vegas for WrestleMania, but this is an all-time record, and it's for SummerSlam. It's pretty crazy. Now, I say all-time record. Of course, we're not counting Saudi Arabia. They're getting $50 million to bring that show, but this is a little different. I mean, domestically, the idea that, they used to run SummerSlam. They've run WrestleMania in the Northeast for nothing, paid to be there. And now, I mean, I know nobody wants to think about it this way. The taxpayers are paying WWE to come to their town. My goodness.
They are, but in a way, Conrad, if you look, I'm not an expert on this. I never had the opportunity to get involved in any kind of discussions related to the subject, but there's a reason why these cities are paying this money. And there's a reason why it continues to increase. And it's not because somebody there's a wrestling fan. It's
No.
all revenue driven, and the city knows, yeah, it's taxpayer money that they're committing, but the amount of revenue that's going to be driven into that community and the taxes on that revenue,
Economic
what makes-
impact is what they call it.
yeah, and there's a math formula there. They wouldn't be stroking a $7 million check if they didn't look at the numbers and go, sure, we can do that, and we're going to make money on top of it. So it's just an amazing phenomenon to see happening with, you expect it with the Super Bowl, World Series or whatever, but wrestling, this is crazy.
We touched on it a little bit last week. I know you mentioned something in passing, but I could tell you didn't really want to spend much time on it. But now it's been announced WWE has LFG, which I guess stands for Legends and Future Greats.
Yeah, was that? It's not how I remember it. Oh, no. That was somebody talking in a car. LFG, Legends and Future Greats. Do you think that's what it stands for? Okay.
Yeah. Did you hear it stood for something else?
No. I might have heard something in passing. Maybe somebody was just joking around.
Oh, WTF. So listen, the launch of WWE's Greatest Moments, WWE Rivals, these are sort of A&E shows that we've seen before. And now we've got Legends and Future Greats. So allegedly, here's what it says. The former series will provide viewers with a behind-the-scenes look at up-and-coming talents as they attempt to secure themselves a WWE contract, all while being mentored by WWE icons such as Paul Triple H Levesque and Shawn Michaels. Follow legends The Undertaker, Booker T, Mickey James, and Bubba Ray Dudley will serve as regular coaches for WWE LFG as they assess and give feedback on in-ring matches. This is the story from Wrestling Inc. What do you think of this idea, Eric?
It's I know I sound like a WWE show, but I can't help it. They're doing so much good shit. It's hard not to be excited about it and put it over. No, I'm not under contract. I didn't get paid to say that. But what I'm about to say, I didn't get paid for either. But that is such a cool idea. When I first heard it over the phone, I knew it was about a 20-minute call. I knew 3 minutes in that it was a winner. And it just kept getting better and better and better. I just saw, one show that I was a part of, or part of one show that I was a part of. They were actually shooting over 2 days for one episode, I believe, parts of it. But it's going to be cool. It's competition elimination type format, right? We've all seen that format. The format's been around forever in all kinds of different shapes and forms. The format is what it is, but the way they go about interacting and learning and the pressure that they're under and the challenges they have is really pretty unique because it's wrestling. So I think people will love it. I really do. And again, I'm looking at talent, some of whom had only been in the ring or in training for 4 weeks. And I'm watching them compete on that show. And I was shocked. Still am.
Let's look forward to WWE LFG, and that definitely stands for Legends and Future Greats and nothing else. And now let's talk about a little bit of AEW business, and then we'll finally get to our topic, I promise. But man, the internet has been talking a lot about Ray Phoenix. He actually tweeted out the morning of the big on sale rally in Dallas. Oh man, this is getting ugly. He's deleted the posts or deleted the tweets now, but he's clearly knocking AEW. He's alleging that he's been treated inhumanely, saying that he needed a doctor. I guess that means after he was injured. I'm not exactly sure of all the details there, but he hasn't been used since July. And as you and I are speaking now, about a week from now, he'll be doing a House of Glory event in Queens, New York. Now that's interesting because that show is head to head with the Ring of Honor Final Battle pay-per-view.
Oh my God.
Ballroom.
What can this kick it any more dramatic? This is crazy.
What do you make of this, Eric?
It's crazy. It's, poor Phoenix, he's in Guantanamo Bay.
Wait. What did you say there?
Guantanamo Bay. He's in prison. He can't go anywhere. Every time he tries, he's going to get his hand slapped. The fact that he had to take down his tweets tells me everything I need to know. He's got exposure. It's good. This is going to be a legal situation if it clearly is already, which means it's only going to get uglier. Depending on how much Phoenix needs or wants to dig in. He may just go, fuck it. I'll just ride it out, take the money, do whatever else he could do under that contract. Or he may be, I don't know him. Some people just have principles and go, fuck it. Whatever happens, happens. I kind of relate to that. We'll see.
We'll see indeed. I'm sure as the news continues to evolve, we'll break it down here with Eric and discuss it. One of the things that I feel like we need to discuss, though, is Prize Picks. I've been having so much fun with this. Me and my buddy Cassio were all about it. So are my cousins Derek and Clint. We're talking about it in the group chat every single day. And we want you to make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks. It's the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to $200 your money on Prize Picks. It's so easy to do, too. You can get in on this in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, even Florida. There's more than 10 million members. You should sign up right now. Prize Picks has invented the flex play. It means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your Prize Picks doesn't hit. This is a lot of fun. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. So join now, because right now they're giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards, doing what they're calling Pixmas. How about that? Pixmas. And it's so easy to do, man. Like, all you do is you pick a player and a stat line. Here's an example. You say, I think Jared Goff's got more than 230 passing yards, and I think Barkley is going to score more than 1 touchdown. Boom, you're in. You could say, I think Travis Kelce's going to get more than 70 yards, and I think Lamar Jackson's going to throw it for more than 250 yards. Boom, you're in. It's that simple. So just go right now. Download the app today. Use our code 83weeks. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. So download Prize Picks today. Use the code 83weeks. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. So, Eric, I do want to talk about the myth of ATM Eric. And as we get there, I wanted to ask you about a tweet that Derek Zoo posted on Twitter. He's a friend of ours. He's with us on adfreeshows.com, comedy guy, big supporter of everything he does. And he had this tweet that I wanted to get your take on here, Eric. He wrote, Hey, it's Conrad, big fantasy booking here. Don't know if there's enough for you and EB to discuss, but here goes. Sting beats Hulk Hogan at Starrcade 97. Goldberg beats Raven for the U.S. title in 98. Goldberg wins World War III, 1998. And that sets up WCW's version of the Ultimate Challenge. And that was the nickname, Eric, so you know, of Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6 in Toronto at the Sky Dome. So the idea here is, Derek suggests this would be Sting passing the torch to Goldberg, much like Hulk Hogan was trying to pass it to the Ultimate Warrior. I thought that was an interesting thought. What do you think of that?
I really, really like that.
It's a pretty good idea.
That's a great what if.
Yeah.
That should be a series.
Oh, we should do that. We should do that.
We kind of already are. But yeah, that's what a great idea that is. Obviously, there's a lot of time in between. There's a lot of things that have to happen that have to be pretty big and pretty financially successful along the way. So that's where the work comes, but it's entirely possible. But that's where you really have to spend the time working towards that and building story all along the way. Cool idea, Derek. Where were you when I needed you, bro? You were probably 12.
I thought it was worth asking, though, because it was such an interesting idea. Like, yeah, that would kind of be, because I've said before, I felt like Goldberg was like the WCW Ultimate Warrior. So when he was like, oh, okay, Like if Hogan was the baby face of the WWF, well, Sting was that of WCW, so I could see it.
It'd be fun.
Today we're talking, maybe we're going to debunk, or at least that's my belief. One of the most common narratives that we've heard, common criticisms. I don't even know all the ways you would describe this phrase, ATM Eric. The idea is that you're just throwing cash at everybody. You're just writing blank checks. You've got a bottomless budget from Ted Turner. And we're going to run through all of that. But when do you first remember hearing someone say ATM Eric?
For whatever reason, I don't know if it's a fact or not, but I seem to remember Mick Foley saying it on ECW. And I obviously didn't see it because I didn't watch the show, but I had heard about it shortly thereafter, a couple days, I think.
So when you hear it, how does that strike you? How does that make you feel? What was your immediate reaction?
I had been hearing it. Vince McMahon started it. It was big bad billionaire and all the press in every interview he was doing while we were kicking his ass. It was always, Ted Turner's trying to put me out of business and he's, spending money just to do so. And, internally at WWE, there are still people who walk around deep down inside. If they're honest with themselves, still believe to this day that all I did was spend money, got lucky, whatever. They still won't acknowledge deep down inside what it took to accomplish what we accomplished. And it wasn't just writing checks. That's how that's the narrative that Vince McMahon wanted out there. And then it just carried over, right? It became true. You start hearing it in interviews, it says it. It's a financial, Forbes magazine, for example, or wherever he said it in the newspaper. He puts it out there and he's very serious about it. And it becomes narrative on the business side. And that's what Vince's goal was, to look like he was trying to babyface himself. He was trying to be the milquetoast babyface while the big nasty heel Ted Turner was kicking his ass. He was a sympathetic babyface. Ted Turner was the bully. And then, like I said, that narrative just kind of took on a life of its own, certainly in the dirt sheets and even talent. People that were angry, even internally in WCW, by the way. There were people in WCW in management, mid-management, that for whatever reason didn't feel like I deserved that job, and that their friend or their family member or whomever, for whatever reason, was better suited for it. So there was some of that internally, but not much, but some. But outside of WCW, it was everywhere because nobody really understood what happened, what it took. They didn't really analyze how I did it. It was really easy to say, oh, he's not that smart. He must just be spending money like crazy.
Well, let's let some of our listeners decide. We're going to have a link in the description for today's show that's going to lead you over to the handy tables in the archives of the WrestleNomics website. They've actually broken down all the data because there was a lawsuit against the company. Well, more than one. And at some point in the year 2000, we were able to access all of the financial records, at least contract values, from 96, 97, 98, 99, and 2000. So the fine folks over at WrestleNomics have aggregated all that information. We have that available for you in the link for today's description of the show. But this whole ATM Eric thing took on a life of its own, to the point that there was even a chapter in J.J. Dillon's book called ATM Eric. Did you know that before I just said that to you just now?
No, I didn't read his book, and nobody mentioned it to me before this. That's funny.
Well, here's what JJ had to say. Eric was very generous with Time Warner's money. He gave out huge guaranteed contracts to the talent. The problem was when the gross revenue streams dropped, they did so to a dramatic extent, and the WCW budget remained at an all-time high level. Our pay structure was much like that of the Atlanta Braves. When business is good and Turner Field is filled with paying customers, the baseball franchise makes money, so higher labor costs can be justified. But when the stadium is half empty and business declines, those labor costs become a huge drain on the company's resources. When talent began jumping to WCW for these guaranteed contracts, Vince was forced to offer guaranteed contracts to his talent, but he controlled his labor costs by structuring most contracts with a minimum downside guarantee that still included an unlimited upside. When business was down, the talent would get a minimum guarantee, which would usually allow them to make a comfortable living during those slow business times. When business was good, they would be compensated at a much higher level. The downside guarantee allowed Vince to adjust his labor costs to the company's income. Let's just stop right there, Eric. I love me some JJ Dillon. I know we probably have different opinions there, but
no, I'm good. I'm good with JJ. Last time I saw JJ, we sat down at a bar and
okay, great,
wherever it was, and had a couple of beers and talked about old times.
As a matter of fact, you were both in Jacksonville for AEW.
There you go.
How about that? What do you make of the way he's described this? I think I appreciate what he's saying, and I think he's describing it mostly correct. But minimum downside guarantee, that's the same as a contract to me, a guaranteed contract. Like, it's not going to go below this. What Vince was actually doing back then is he's paying everybody based on the house. And so you wouldn't really know what you were getting until you got a check. And then, of course, eventually that would change and you would see these guaranteed contracts. But these downside guarantees, that the last word still means guarantee. I mean, downside guarantee and guaranteed contract, it's the same thing, Eric, to me.
It absolutely is. However, where JJ is correct, and I think perhaps what he was trying to communicate was that because of the structure between the downside and unlimited upside, first of all, it's brilliant if you can sell it.
Yeah.
If you can sell that, it's pretty brilliant because, to JJ's point, great. If I'm doing $1 million a month and my talent budget is only $500,000 a month, I'm good. But if my talent budget is $500,000 a month and the bottom falls out, I'm in shit. Well, with Vince's contract, it might not be a $500,000 guarantee. It might only be $250,000, but it still leaves him margin that I didn't have. I made a flat guarantee. I wished I could have sold what Vince was able to sell. Keep in mind, and this is the nuance of people, people that live in the basement will never figure this out or take the time to try to. But WCW had no revenue to share. Vince had a history of having lots of revenue to share. There were people at the top, like Hulk Hogan, for example. His merchandising checks were legendary. They were folklore. They were so big. And there were people below him that were doing not as well, but still doing very, very well. Well, what does that communicate to the people who are in the middle of the card or at the bottom of the card, or maybe somebody that's thinking about coming in? Now, you may not walk in and get that kind of big money, but you're going to get enough money to pay your bills every month, which you've never had before, by the way. And you still have an opportunity to take a crack at the big time. So Vince correctly, and I think brilliantly, I doubt he came up with it, but whoever worked for him, however it happened, it was a really good pay structure for wrestling because of its volatility. I could never have sold that because I didn't have any revenue to I couldn't say, hey, I know. You came in here wanting $500,000 a month. I'm going to only offer you $250,000, but here's how you can make even more money. I didn't have here's how you could make even more money part of my pitch, because they would have laughed at me. It had never happened. We were losing money at the time I was handing out these quote unquote big contracts. So that's the nuance between what I was able to sell to be competitive in the industry and to bring in the names I brought in so that I could successfully turn the company around and make it profitable for the first time in its history and dig out of a 6 or 7 year hole in terms of finances. So ultimately, it was a good strategy on my part. It didn't have an option. I couldn't have attracted that talent to come in on any kind of a revenue share basis like they had come from, for the reasons I just described. So I'll never take offense to, for example, JJ's example of how beneficial and how so much better structured the WWE contracts were than mine. I agree. I just couldn't have sold it.
I appreciate that you're just being honest about, hey, I couldn't sell that. I mean, do you think, how much of that is just simply because they're the WWF?
No, it's just Vince could literally open up his ledger. He could go to a spreadsheet and say, this is how much money this list of people shared in upside revenue.
Yeah.
Oh, and pay-per-view. Oh, and merchandise. Oh, and house show attend, and and royalties for all the other stuff that you did 2 years ago, because that all starts adding up. I mean, they're not big checks, but some of them are actually a couple times a year. The quarterly ones are still quite exciting, to be honest with you. But it's for stuff that I did 15 years ago that they would have to pay me if I was, sitting on a beach and never said hi to them again. Contractually, that's the way their contracts are set up. That's nothing special for me, but anybody that's ever been a part of WWE that are featured in videos and all the other things that they do are getting royalty checks, even though they're not under contract. And that's an attractive thing. That was an easier thing to sell. Vince had a track record. WCW had a track record. It was horrible. So it was easier for Vince to pitch potential upside than it was for a company that had never had any upside.
Well, you're going to find plenty of upside, and it's pretty easy to enjoy Vea. Maybe your time, maybe it's ready. Maybe you're ready. Maybe you need a break from the crowded stores, the endless gift lists, all the honey-do lists we all have during our holiday season. Let's restore your zen and embrace the natural power of hemp this holiday season. I'm so excited about our product, Vea, here. I am a regular user. I think you'll find out why as soon as you try it. Vea's premium THC and THC-free gummies can help you find your perfect holiday balance. They don't just have gummies either. Vea's also got vapes, THCA flower, soothing topicals, calming drops, and it all comes to you in discreet packaging. It legally ships to nearly all states here in the United States. There's no medical card required, and you've even got a worry-free guarantee. And right now, Vea is having a huge holiday sale. For a limited time, you can save up to 25% off site-wide, plus up to 50% off select items and bundles. And if you're hearing this ad post-sale, you can still save by using the code 83weeks, and you'll get 15% off. So if you're 21 and over, check out the link to Vea's website in the description. You're going to love it. Eric, I've had a blast with Vea. What have you thought of your use of Vea?
I like it sometimes when I have a little bit of trouble falling asleep.
Okay.
And it's very subtle. Wake up in the morning feeling 100% ready to go. Even at 4 a.m, I feel good when I wake up. But it's great when you need to take the edge off for me. And there's a lot of different varieties for a lot of different reasons. But for me, I like it to relax and get some sleep.
If you're having trouble sleeping, I can't recommend anything better. I actually talked to a bona fide Hall of Fame wrestler this week, and they told me that they've recently started using Vea because it has a little THC in it, and that made all the difference. Before, he was doing the THC-free gummies that he had seen in other places. He tried Vea. He used our promo code. He's sleeping better than ever now. Couldn't wait to tell me. And I can't wait to hear what your experience is. These guys are an industry leader. I'm talking about Vea. They've got more than 500,000 customers. They've got award-winning customer service. It's also affordable. It's accessible. So you're not going to have to break the bank or crack open your budget. This is the real deal, man. This holiday season, gift yourself some peace of mind. If you're 21 and over, just check out the link for Vea in our description. And for a limited time, as I said, during the holidays, Vea's got 25% off site-wide, plus up to 50% off select items and bundles. And even if you're hearing this ad post-sale, you can still save. Just use our code 83 weeks and you'll get 15% off. And after you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Help us out, man. Please tell them that we sent you. Support our show. This holiday season, enhance your everyday with Vea. So, Eric, we're talking about this whole, ATM Eric thing that JJ Dillon wrote. And we sort of took a break talking about the difference in the contract structure. Let's pick it up from there, what JJ wrote in his book. As an unwritten law, it says that in order to be a successful wrestling promoter, you have to keep your labor cost at 25% of your gross revenue. This rule holds true for a huge wrestling promotion like the WWF or even a small independent promotion. Vince's numbers might be larger than the independents, but the percentages are applicable. The labor cost at WCW was closer to 60%. Let's time out right there, Eric. Because I'm sure at certain times when you look at it, when it was skewed, maybe that could have been true, that it was 60%. But I find that hard to believe that during the great years that the labor was 60%, right?
Yeah, it was close. If he would have said 30, I would have bet. And I unfortunately, I don't have those records. I never did have them once I, left my office at Turner. But I do recall some of our top line numbers, and it was probably 98, 97, 98, most likely 98. Our before intercompany allocations and distribution to all the other parts of Turner Broadcasting that we were feeding, some of whom weren't even doing any of the work. Turner Home International, supposedly international video distribution that never happened unless we did it. But we still distributed a percentage of our gross revenues to these various divisions within Turner Broadcasting. That's what's called an intercompany allocation. If you go back and watch Who Killed WCW, listen closely to Dick Cheatham and what he has to say about all that. I remember our number being closer to 350 million. Might have been the best number I remember. And about that time, our talent was either just below or just above 100 million. So I don't know what numbers JJ was looking at, what years, if it was average from day one, if it was 1999, all those things would matter if you're talking about numbers instead of a snapshot out of a book. But I think you may be a little off.
Have you ever heard that unwritten law, 25%?
No, but I imagine, look, JJ had a close-up view of how Vince structured his company. And I'm the only thing that JJ Dillon knew about running a successful wrestling company is watching Vince McMahon up close. JJ never ran one. JJ was a talent in one, NWA or working for Crockett, whatever it was. But he never ran a promotion, but he got a front row seat, especially on a financial side with Vince. And I'm sure that's where that's where the law came from. Maybe it was passed down from Vince Sr. I don't know, but that's probably where that came from.
I think I've heard, some old timers say before, and maybe even Bruce talked about Paul, but there was a specific formula. Maybe it was something like a third, or something like that. Let's go back to JJ's book here. This is the chapter called ATM Eric from JJ Dillon's book, Wrestlers Are Like Seagulls. He would write, one big advantage to working for the WWF was the income from the separate merchandising and licensing agreements for all talent. It was reported numerous times that some WWF wrestlers made more money from the ancillary sources than they did from wrestling. I can see where that may have been true in some cases. Merchandising is where Vince really revolutionized the business. He promoted the extra ancillary forms of revenue and shared the proceeds with the talent. Some of the talent made a lot of money from merchandising. In the WWF, I saw the contracts and the agreements. There was a detailed accounting process put in place that allowed the company to send printouts to each talent showing exactly how many of each item had sold and the exact dollar amount they would get. It would even factor in returned items. Unfortunately, WCW never had the structure in place to develop a workable merchandising program. The WWF was light years ahead of WCW in that era. WCW only scratched the surface in setting up licensing and merchandising deals. Even if they had made more deals, the company didn't have the infrastructure to track and manage those revenue sources. They had no way to keep track of what was being sold. Of course, guys like Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, who came from the WWF, were accustomed to getting an accounting of what was sold, so they were very suspicious over their merchandise payoffs in WCW. Let's just stop right there. Eric, you've been a part of the WWF now for, gosh, over 20 years, which is a crazy thing to say. I know you're not actively working there now. I'm just saying you've had a relationship with them and at different times have been under contract there, and he's not under contract now. He just said that last week. But you've gotten these statements before. Can you describe them to us as a talent? Like you could see what's sold and all the revenue and all that sort of thing?
It is broken down to the penny. And and I get one at least once a quarter. I may get them sooner, but I don't even look at them, to be honest with you. And I'm about to tell you why. Let's say the last the quarterly one I got, sometimes I'll page through them really quickly to see where the big numbers come from, if there are any big numbers. In my case, big is a relative figure, but where the largest ones are, just out of curiosity to see what's moving and if it's a new product or if it's a product that's been, consistently doing pretty well for them and ultimately for me. But I spend maybe 5 minutes doing that, if that, because I'll get a stack half an inch to 3/4 of an inch, half an inch thick, realistically, weighs about 2 pounds. And there'll be thousands of itemized product numbers. And it will tell me how much, if any, I made off each one to the penny. So you can track it. Now, there's no way in the world I could tell you the formula. I never asked. No one ever explained it to me. I just said, sure, I'll do that. I mean, my contract was a little different. I was being paid as a television performer, not as a wrestler. So my contract was different, but it still had a licensing component to it. And I just figured whatever it is, it's bonus. It's just on top of it. So I didn't even think about it. But I still get them once a quarter, and you can go through and it'll tell you everything about it, but you will never know. I will never know what the formula they use to arrive at that statement. That's the complicated part. And that's where the genius comes in, by the way. When I said that was a genius way to structure contracts, if you can get away with it, I mean that. Structuring talent contracts this way, it's so unique, and it's unique to wrestling. You couldn't apply this to actors and actresses. You probably could apply this, I guess, to a professional sport that isn't used to a format that they already have, and with unions that fight for it and all that. You could probably figure out a variation of it, but it doesn't really exist anywhere else. So it's not modeled after anything. It had to be created over a long period of time by people like the McMahons, perhaps senior, perhaps junior. Maybe I heard or read, led to believe a lot it was Linda when she was CEO of the company. Her primary influence was on contracts and the business side. That was not Vince's strong suit. That was her strong suit. But that's when all that started, with her. And it is really quite brilliant.
I wanted to ask you something else that JJ wrote here. It's his opinion, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's his opinion that WCW was never able to really truly capture their licensing, their marketing, their merchandising the way that the WWE was. They didn't have the infrastructure. What do you make of that?
Conrad, I've been saying that for years on this podcast. I mean, he's exactly right. There's nothing that JJ said in his book so far that hurts my feelings at all. He's right. JJ wasn't there for certain periods of the explosion of WCW. Quite frankly, if WCW hadn't exploded the way it did, I wouldn't have been able to bring JJ in when I did and how I did. But we were already in a great trajectory. JJ didn't have to experience the challenge of trying to get top talent from WWE who are used to those big merchandising contracts and the sophistication of them and the reliance upon them. He didn't have to try to talk those people to come to a company that didn't have that. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, but JJ's observation overall is 100% accurate and truthful.
Let's talk a little bit about, well, let me just read it to you. JJ's book again. Wrestlers are like seagulls. At that point, could the problems with the company have been fixed? I'd like to think so. Would it have been a lot of work? Absolutely. If someone is taken to the hospital after being involved in a horrible car accident with cuts all over their body, the surgeons have to decide which wound to treat first. Any of the injuries could get infected. Will their efforts work? There's no way to know for sure. You can't know the outcome of your actions, but you have to start somewhere. The longer you sit around and talk about the patient and argue about where to start, the worse the patient will get. And WCW was in that kind of shape. Many of the contracts were guaranteed for 2 or 3 years, but we had to start somewhere. When I first went to my first TV taping, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall took me by the arm and said, "Let's go to the lunchroom and have a little talk." After steering me to a table in a remote corner of the lunchroom, Kevin said in a low voice, "Whatever you do, do not tell Eric Bischoff what kind of money we're making in the WWF." What do you think of that?
I think JJ's probably just, again, because of the timing when JJ came in, he's probably talking about that period of time in 99 and 2000 when he was actually in management. When JJ was there, he was kind of in management. I mean, technically he was, but JJ wasn't really involved in much, talent relations type stuff. So JJ's window into the details of what was going on prior to or even during that time were limited while I was there. But in terms of the Scott and Kevin, I could probably see that. I could probably see that. It sounds like something Kevin would do.
He would continue. I laughed. Scott and Kevin smiled, and that was the end of our conversation. They'd told me everything I needed to know about Eric in that one statement. They knew that I was familiar with the specifics of their WWF contracts and that I knew their earnings while at the WWF. They negotiated a much sweeter deal with Eric, a high dollar guaranteed deal, and they didn't want anybody rocking their boat. At that point, I didn't know what my role was going to be or what was going to be required of me, so I didn't say anything. There was one particular talent who worked for the WWF when I was there. He was the top name in the business and had a minimum downside guarantee with the WWF that was consistent with most contracts at the time. And after I left and went to WCW, the WWF failed to renew his contract, and he spent 1 year working on the independent circuit. All of a sudden, I heard that he was being brought on board by Eric. His guaranteed contract was more than double what he'd been making with the World Wrestling Federation. That was a classic example of someone I could have helped Eric with. I knew the numbers. I knew about his situation. How could Eric justify offering the guy such a lucrative contract, especially without talking to me? Who could provide him with the details he needed to negotiate the contract, even if it was just 15 seconds over the water cooler? So let's just time out right there. I mean, it seems like, JJ's putting it in there pretty plainly. Hey, Eric, I could have helped you not pay these guys so much money. And I read that one of two ways. If I was a wrestler reading that, I might be thinking, damn it, I thought JJ was going to take care of the boys. What the hell? And I also think in that same vein, hey, good on Eric, giving these guys raises, making sure that if the company can afford it, we're going to take care of our people. But then I see some people online who get upset when a guy like Swerve Strickland allegedly signs a multi-million-dollar contract, or Mercedes Moné sets a new record with her deal. Like, why do we care what anyone make? Why wouldn't we cheer everyone on for making more? How do you make this? We could have got him for less, Eric. How do you respond to that?
Again, that's a reflection of JJ having never run a business and just being part of the machine. Again, now keep in mind JJ's writing a book here, and
yes,
we get a little flowery,
yeah,
I guess, in some of our descriptions to try to make things sound a little more interesting. His point here is that I didn't take advantage of JJ and I didn't know how to run a wrestling company because I was spending too much money on talent. Okay. That's his point. And everything he's writing here is to support that perspective. What I did, again, because I didn't have the opportunity to offer the type of structured deal that Vince did, I had to guarantee people significantly more money than they were used to getting at WWE. And let's go back to Kevin as I make this example. I don't remember what Kevin told me he made. I think I was under the impression that all in, he was probably around 350, 400 grand a year after all the expenses that he had along the way, because he may have made more money gross, but when you're paying a lot of your own expenses and taxes on top of it, it doesn't matter as much. But I knew I was paying Kevin more money than he was making.
Right.
And I honestly didn't care how much more. I wasn't basing my business because of what I needed to do. I had to attract that talent. There was no level playing field, JJ, or anybody that thinks like him or thought like him, I should say. There was no level playing field. I had to, if I wanted to buy my way into the market to a degree, invest in my own company, and bring in the talent that will allow me to grow my market share. This is where the running a business part comes in. If, in order for me to make a decision to take that risk to grow my business, I had to make a commitment that was much larger than I would have had to make if I was Vince McMahon, for all the reasons we've already talked about and JJ discussed. So, yes, I paid more. Now, let's go to why I didn't use JJ. And this is where I was hoping I wouldn't have to say anything to hurt JJ's feelings. And I hope this doesn't, because I've said it before a long time ago. But I brought JJ in under special circumstances that I'm not going to discuss because it was his life, not mine. But because Kevin spoke highly of JJ and Kevin wanted to do right by JJ, Kevin came to me, explained the situation, and I thought, I'm absolutely sure I could use some help in that area. Let's just do it. I never interviewed JJ. I don't believe I did. If I did, it was a show interview. I just did the deal. And I was excited to do it for all the right reasons. Shortly thereafter, JJ came up to me carrying an envelope, folder, and kind of made it known to me that it was a little top secret kind of stuff. And he stopped me right in front of the receptionist, a couple of feet in front of the receptionist. And he said, "Hey, I've got something for you." I wasn't expecting anything from him. And he opened it up, and it's WWE's entire payroll. Put my hand on it. Said, "Don't need it, JJ. Thank you." From that point on, I no longer trusted JJ. At least I didn't know how much I should trust JJ. Because anybody that's willing to screw their former employer at some point in time is going to be willing to screw me, because we're all going to have a former relationship at some point in time. And once someone crosses a line like that, and I know I can't be honest with them, or at least truthful with them about some things, I never get close again. I can be friendly and I can allow them to do things that don't involve things that require discretion, but not with me. So that's the reason why. I just got that tingle up my spine.
JJ also wrote in his book, "My experience was in the management of talent. He didn't take advantage of it until it was too late. When I started working for WCW, the legal department sent me a printout of the talent along with the details of their money. On my copy, the numbers of key people were blacked out. I wasn't privy to the information of those key people until Eric walked in one day and said, 'I really need your help.' At that point, the information became more forthcoming. Eric's biggest problem surfaced when the talent realized they could manipulate him. They quickly learned that if they walked into his office and threw a temper tantrum, they could get whatever they asked for. I need you to pay for my hotel rooms. I won't fly coach. It's first class or nothing. I want my own dressing room. There was a time when just about everybody on the roster was traveling first class because Eric bought into their song and dance act. I got calls all the time. Quote, effective today, so-and-so flies first class, end quote. The guys with contracts that were binding on both WCW and the talent, were even able to get their contracts rewritten in their favor. The hole just kept getting deeper and deeper, and behind his back, Eric Bischoff was referred to as ATM Eric. If you pushed the right buttons, he'd spit cash out at you. The wrestling business had reached a point where the mentality of the wrestler was me, me, me. I knew that everybody is interested in getting the best deal for themselves and their family, but it got to the point where the talent devoured the carcass of WCW, bones and all, until there was nothing left for anybody. Eric, your response?
JJ's trying to sell a book. JJ's putting himself over. JJ was the guy who knew all along he could have saved the company if only somebody would have listened to me, because I was one of the four horsemen and I worked for Vince. I never really ran a wrestling company, but after the fact, I can tell you a story that'll be really, really interesting and sound like the facts. That's what that was. It was a story. It's and I get it. I don't hold a grudge. I'm disappointed, I guess, and I shouldn't be, because I knew what JJ was back then. And like I said, I understand people go through what they go through. His life was what his life was. He was trying, in his book, he's probably trying to position himself to, I don't know, get another crack at the wrestling business someday, or at least walk around with his head held up high and trying to convince people that he could have been the savior. Only given the opportunity, if only Eric Bischoff would have listened to me. That's what that was. That was JJ putting JJ over.
We got to talk a little bit more about some of the actual numbers. But before we do, let me run you through the numbers at Henson Shaving. Did you know that according to a recent study, 2/3 of men expect some form of irritation when they shave? You see, the reality is if you were born after 1970, there's a very good chance your first razor was a multi-blade razor. But where's it gotten us? All this irritation. And really, there's no information on how to prevent irritation at all, just how to treat it. In fact, there's more than 2 billion plastic razors that go into our landfills just here in the United States alone. And these razor blade models, well, man, that creates high operating costs. Down at my drugstore, they keep it behind the lock and key. And that's why Henson Shaving wants to change the shaving industry, not through gimmicky subscriptions or moisturizing strips, but through groundbreaking research on the impact that shaving has on your skin. And here's a dirty secret about the razor industry. Even the cheapest dollar store disposable razor would give you a reasonably smooth shave. The trick is in removing the hair without any negative outcomes to your skin, like irritation, razor burn, ingrown hairs, razor bumps. And Henson, man, when you look at all the other razors, they noticed a lack of blade support. Basically, the blades just have too much bend or flex. And you can't think of anything that you cut with like a kitchen knife or scissors where you would want the blade that you use to be moving. You'd have less control. And so that's what Henson razors do. They're designed to hold the blade so there's less bend and less wobble. Henson makes their razors in their aerospace machine shop in Canada. It's the same machine shop that's made parts for the Mars rover in the International Space Station. Henson's machinists are exceptional at manufacturing, and the level of precision is one of the big reasons that their razor is so much gentler on your skin. They've made it to where the blade just extends 0.0013 inches past the shave plane of the razor. That's less than the thickness of a human hair. The Henson razor works with a standard dual-edged blade that costs less than 10 cents each. You see, once you own a Henson razor, it's only like $3 to $5 a year to replace the blades. The razor itself, well, it's made of aluminum, and there's no plastic. By the way, there's no plastic in Henson's packaging either. This is my favorite razor ever. Even if they stop sponsoring us today, I'm going to use a Henson until I die. I got my dad using it. I got all my buddies using it. Everybody at the office is using it. Even my barber's using it. It's the best razor I've ever used. I dare you to try it. You're going to love it. Let's say no to subscriptions. Let's say yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Go right now to hensonshaving.com/Eric83. to pick the razor for you and use the code Eric83 to get a free shave cream with your razor. Just be sure to add it to your cart. That's a Henson free shave cream. When you go to hensonshaving.com/Eric83 and use the code Eric83, that's HENSONSHAVING.com/Eric83, get you some free Henson shaving cream and the best shave of your life. Eric, let's talk about some of the numbers here. This is all public information now, so it's not necessarily a secret. The first deal you signed Hall and Nash to were $750,000 per year. And if you adjust for inflation from May of 96 to now, that's about $1.5 million in 2024 dollars. And the narrative that we've heard from guys like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash is there was this phrase used in the business known as sting money. He was sort of the measuring stick. Sting money. Does that sound right, that these guys would have been making $750 a year and that was close to sting money?
It was sting money. It was. And by the way, that's another good point as we're talking about this, because context is really, really fucking important in this broader discussion. For example, Sting, Lex Luger were making $750 grand a year in 1991 when I was hired as a C-Squad announcer. There were certain talents who were already in place, and they were higher level, obviously, but even some of the even guys like Johnny B. Bad and others were already making pretty good money when I was put into management. So there was a bar that I had to start from that was guaranteed. That was the top of the roster, and then we started working our way down. But I'm going to go back to who is at the top and why Sting money is such an important part of the discussion as we go through this. But yeah, 750 is right for both of them.
We should mention that this is around the same time that Kevin Nash is coming off one of the bigger runs of his career. It was a three-way house show feud with Bret Hart and The Undertaker that had turned around the WWF's house show business. And around that same time, you were running Ric Flair and Randy Savage on house shows, and that was upticking as well. So it does feel like 750 is going to be a bump from where they are in the WWF. And more than that, it's guaranteed. I mean, we've all heard Kevin Nash do interviews where he would say things like, hey, we didn't know until we got our WrestleMania payoff what kind of year we were going to have. Mm-hmm. The guaranteed piece of this, and for fewer dates, that really just goes back to that old wrestling saying, the money in the miles, right?
It's all that we had to offer. it's all we had to offer. The future was very uncertain. Keep in mind, when Scott and Kevin came back to WCW, it was doing better than it was when they left, but it still wasn't making a ton of cash. We were still, I think we may have been profitable than the year that they came in. Yeah, we were.
You were, yeah.
Yeah, but not by a ton. We weren't rolling in it yet.
Oh, yeah. Let me back that up. Actually, you were profitable in 95, just barely. That's the one at the 95 Christmas party where the guy got on his knee and gave you the $5 or whatever.
$1. $1.
96 was a profitable year. 97 was huge. But there's a report out there, and I don't know if this is true or not, and you may not even remember, but let's try to clear it up as best we can. There's been interviews sometime in the past where Kevin Nash sort of hinted around at the fact that he maybe had a deal memo, but not an actually signed contract with you. And that when JR had gone on TV, I think this would have been like September of 96, and promised that he was bringing Razor and Diesel back. When he announced that, allegedly, as the story goes, that's when you realize, oh, wait, they just signed deal memos, not contracts. And their agents were actually able to get a little bit of a bump. And then, of course, as we're watching Monday Night Raw backstage at Nitro, it's not Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. It's Rick Bogner and Glenn Jacobs as fake Razor and fake Diesel. Is that really the way that happened? It was deal memos, and that's when the contracts got signed, or do you not remember that?
I don't remember it that way, bro.
Okay.
I mean, wow. Could be me. I don't know. I don't remember it that way.
So you're not saying it couldn't have happened that way, or are you saying I think Kevin and I just disagree there?
I think Kevin and I disagree there.
Okay, all right.
I'm just trying to be cool about it.
I got you. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Overall, do you think that there would have been, with the benefit of hindsight, do you think that you just became a convenient punching bag with this ATM Eric? Like it just became an easy criticism that everyone hit? Like it does feel like in more recent years or more recent months, very specifically, we've heard a lot of people who are critical of Tony Khan say, why doesn't he just book smaller buildings? Why doesn't he? And so there's these same things that we hear over and over and over again. But overpaying talent, being a pushover for the talent, acquiescing too much for the talent, ATM Eric, that all kind of gets lumped in the same way. I mean, do you feel like all of this, whether it's Kevin Nash telling a story to be entertaining or JJ Dillon telling a story to sell a book,
everybody's putting themselves over? Kevin's the smartest guy in the world. He's the greatest negotiator of all times. Partially true, because that's how he sees himself. But some of these things I'm hearing are just, it's just like JJ. If only Eric would have listened to me. I mean, that's so fucking obvious and sappy. It's sad, particularly given the role that JJ really had there. And I explained why I didn't want to work closely with him and why I didn't trust him. That's on JJ. It's not on me. But it's a comfortable narrative for people who have never accomplished, who want others to think if only they would have had that opportunity. I mean, I got that a lot, and it just comes with the territory. Success has many fathers, but failure's an orphan. And you hear a lot of people taking a lot of credit for a lot of the success at WCW, but when it comes down to the way they manage themselves or what they contributed or not, no, that's not my fault. That's Eric's fault. He just wrote too many checks. He spent too much money. The talent pushed him around. What about the guys that complained what a prick I was to work with and threw coffee at? And, it's like you hear both sides of it depending on what the story happens to be.
well, let's talk about the story that we read in the Torch. It's not until late August 1999 before we hear or see the phrase ATM Eric pop up in the newsletter. And it is indeed the Torch, dated August 30th, 1999, or for the week of that. I guess it was technically dated September 4th. Anyway, here's what Wade had to say. The first weekend ticket sales for Fall Brawl in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, barely passed 2,000 tickets, a huge disappointment. That market has been subjected to bad pay-per-view events in the past. The lack of enthusiasm first weekend sales may be a sign that the poor quality of WCW events is catching up to WCW. Ticket sales are showing signs of lagging across the board. WCW has made money the last couple of years. This year, they're apparently on pace to basically break even. If that's the case, some of the deals Bischoff has brokered will be scrutinized much more closely than if WCW were making tens of millions in profit. The talk is stronger than ever that Bischoff's position as head of WCW is on shaky ground. Some believe odds are against him lasting much beyond January 2000. The only allies Bischoff has in Turner are some of the wrestlers, but that's for selfish reasons. Wrestlers have nicknamed Bischoff ATM Eric because of his reputation for generous pay on contracts. For example, Rick Steiner earning nearly $1 million a year on his new 3-year contract. So to be clear, that's not technically correct. It was $750,000 a year. That was the same as his brother. But I think a lot.
But good catch on them technically. However, it's the narrative.
Yeah.
It's to say at nearly $1 million sounds more than actually $750,000. And at this point, I don't mean to interrupt you. I know you're on a flow there. I apologize, but you covered a lot of ground there.
I was stopping. Go ahead.
A little while ago, I referred to some of the high watermarks that existed before I even got into management. Sting money, $750,000. Lex making the same. Ric Flair, I think, was at 5 at that time. I don't recall much below that. That's when WCW's gross revenues were about $24 million a year. So as we became more successful and started generating far more money, much more money. We went from 24 million to whatever it was, probably 100 million in 1995, whatever the number was. I don't remember. It might have been 90 million. I could care less. We made $1 profit. But by 96, 97, 98, now we're into 50, 100, 250 million dollars in gross revenue, $350 million in gross revenues. What are you supposed to tell talent when their contracts come up? And they're seeing their friends, and because you have to treat talent and pay talent according to the success we're having. And once you've got a floor, that's really, or when you've got your top tier talent, that becomes the floor for top tier talent who are going to be working with each other. So there's what I'm trying to say is that there's an attempt at parity. It's easy to say, why would you pay the Steiner brothers nearly $1 million? Well, you'd say that because you're a dipshit dirt sheet writer that's trying to get attention. I'm cool with Wade now, but he was a lot like Meltzer back then. He was Meltzer Jr. back then. But what are you supposed to tell guys who are like Steiner, who have been there for day one, who are now working with the Stings and the Lugers as they always have, but now they see that we're all drawing more money. We're selling bigger pay-per-views. We're selling merchandise. Am I supposed to go, look, guys, Bill Watts is only paying you $350, so I can bump you maybe up to $4. What the fuck? You know, that's part of the issue that I had with Wade back then. I'm cool with him now. He's grown up. And the real problem I have with Dave Meltzer is the contortions that they go through without really to make someone or something look like a bad decision, or in some cases a good decision, without any understanding of how it all works. None whatsoever. So it's easy for a guy like Wade back then to say, pay Steiner nearly $1 million without have no context, no examples of relationship to other talent, and perhaps why they were making nearly $1 million. So people wonder why I get pissed off at dirt sheets and people that contribute to the discussion of the industry the way that Wade did and Meltzer still does. It's that. Just no context. It's so easy to be critical when you don't know what the fuck you're talking about and there's no context to it.
Respectfully, how did you land on the decision to pay both Scott and Rick the same contract amount in 1999? Like, I know that Booker T and Stevie Ray were once a great tag team, but people were critical when you paid Stevie Ray at the same rate you did Booker T. And now people are critical of you paying Rick Steiner at the same rate that you were paying Scott Steiner. You knew the human beings. You knew how they came in, what their deals were structured. Those are fan criticisms, though, Eric. I'm sure you've heard them. How would you respond to those?
A typical fan criticism, a fan being someone that's never stepped foot into the wrestling business or any business for that matter, that just doesn't understand. So, so the option in theory would be, let's see, you guys are a tag team. There's all the reasons why you should be earning more money. You're working with these top guys who are all making this much money, which is all, by the way, kind of where I started from. It existed before me, but I'm growing my business and I'm making more money. So now it's time to negotiate with two guys who've been in the same matches, who are drawing the same money, who the same brand, have been as long as they've been with the company, they've been one unit. Now I'm going to say, but I like you better than this one, or in my opinion, this one, I think he's worth more. How in the fuck are you going to sell that? Who's going to sell that? Better question. Who's going to buy it? It's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Yeah, it sounds good in a dirt sheet or on fucking Reddit, but gosh, embrace critical thinking. Just embrace it. It's good for you. That's how I respond to that.
Eric, I'm sure you've at least heard the phrase before. You're like cheap toilet paper. You won't take shit off anybody.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, I feel like that might be you, but the way the newsletters wrote about you, it's like they should have started calling you Tushy, because then you would take shit off everybody. That's our next great sponsor here. I can't wait to tell you about. It's easily mine and Eric's favorite. I don't know. I mean, I feel like some people think that a Tushy is like a luxury item, but it is not. It is a game changer, though. It's something you won't ever forget. I don't think that if you've never tried it, I don't know what you're missing. I mean, I really don't know how to describe it. I want you to go out of your way to do this. I'm so excited about this product because I've been such a Tushy user for so long. I literally have one on every toilet in my house. There's one on every toilet at my parents' house. I have been waving this flag for years. I have been such a big fan of this. When they sent me one to vet, I was like, wait a minute. Did we order another one? Because we've already got them all over the doggone house. And it's so easy. I can't just tell you how easy this is. Anybody can install it. You don't need a bunch of fancy tools. You don't have to hook it up to power. You don't need any special drilling. You're good to go. And right now, Tushy and their bidet is dropping deep discounts on bidet life essentials. It's going to transform your bathroom habits and your butt for life. If you've been waiting to upgrade your bathroom or grab a perfect gift for literally anyone on your list, now's the time. Go right now to hellotushy.com and see this week's savings on bidets, bundles, and instant bathroom upgrades. The Tushy bidet easily attaches to your existing toilet. You don't need any additional plumbing or electricity, but washing with a precise stream of fresh water is going to remove like 99% of the bacteria compared to just wiping with toilet paper. Installation is simple. It's only like 10 minutes to get you going. Literally anyone can do it. It's also easy to use. Here's what you do. You take a seat, you handle your business, you turn the knob. Here comes a refreshing stream of clean water. Once you're done, pat it dry with toilet paper and you're good to go. You're going to save like 80% of your toilet paper. No more clogged toilets. You're going to save money and you're going to be much cleaner at the same time. Go right now and check it out. It's hellotushy.com/83 weeks. If you're looking to give the gift of practical luxury that benefits everyone in the doggone household, go to hellotushy.com/83 weeks. Grab this deal before it's gone. And don't forget to give us a shout out while you're there. Let them know we sent you. That's hellotushy.com/83 weeks. Eric, this is the best gift this holiday season. My mom likes it. My dad likes it. My wife likes it. The kids like it. Everybody I've introduced this to says, why didn't we do this sooner?
A happy ass family.
Happy ass
Have
family.
a happy ass family this Christmas. Get them all bidets. Have a whole family of people gathered around the Christmas tree knowing that their ass don't stink.
Happy and clean asses to all. hellotushy.com/83 weeks. Hey, so let's talk about, you've addressed it in recent interviews. I know you talked about it with our pal, Chris Van Vliet. We've touched on it before in the archives as well. There's this narrative that started to pop up in the newsletters where guys like Wade Keller would refer to you as ATM Eric. And a lot of that is coming out of the rumor and innuendo that Time Warner thought you were running a kickback scam. It was nonsense. You were investigated by Time Warner. They did all the auditing and they were able to see, oh, that didn't happen. But in theory, the allegation was you're overpaying talent and then they'd kick you back some. Of course, that had to catch you off guard, and me knowing you piss you off. Like, why would you question your integrity like that? But apparently they did. Do you think that somehow that story got leaked to the newsletters and that's the reason this ATM Eric thing spread?
I know exactly how that happened.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with the dirt sheets. Well, maybe indirectly, but during the Turner Time Warner merger, pre-AOL, might have been post-merger. So the merger might have been official or it could have been right before that. I'm not sure. But evidently WCW Nitro was in a major city. I don't remember which city it was. And there was an individual, night was over, Show's done. People are getting back to the hotel. Fans at this point. The crews were still there. A lot of them, some of them. But there was a guy there wearing a WCW Nitro shirt. And evidently he was someone who was trying to get on, I think, the ring crew or perhaps to be a referee. Can't remember that detail. So he wasn't an employee. A little bit angry that he was trying to get a job that he wasn't able to score at that point. Anywhere, he's wearing his WWE crew shirt that he wore, hoping to get backstage to get a job on the crew, which didn't happen. Anyway, this individual's in an elevator at the end of the night. He's in the elevator, the door opens up, guy walks in. Says, "Hey, cool shirt. Are you with WCW?" And the guy proceeded to talk about how he was trying to get into WCW, but hadn't had any luck so far. And then this individual starts asking him what he knows about WCW. And this individual suggested, I guess, I don't know the details of that conversation, but what I was led to believe is that individual spread that rumor, which led to, I don't know how many months it was, but I found out after it was all over, it was a forensic investigation. Me personally, I don't know how much they got from me personally. I don't know how they would have got my bank records. They might have looked at my taxes and things like that. But not only had I been investigated, but WCW, they had a team of forensic accountants come in. And everybody went, there's no shenanigans going on here. So shortly after, the forensic accountants came in and went, "No, not happening." I get called to Harvey Schiller's office. I'm making money hand over fist for this company. I'm doing things people never thought could be done. I'm having a blast, and everybody's working there at that point is having a blast. Deep, deep, deep into black ink. That means we're making money for those of you that read dirt sheets. I go into Harvey's office. No reason to be nervous about anything. In fact, Harvey very rarely asked me to come to his office, and whenever he did, it was usually a fun conversation of one sort or another. I go up, I sit down, and there's a guy there by the name of Andy Velkoff. Andy Velkoff was a corporate counsel, Turner at the time, I believe. And they proceeded to tell me a version of this story that I just told you. Oh, it started out with, "Eric, we want you to know everything's good. No problems going on here. We just kind of want to talk to you about what we've been doing here for the last couple of months." And then they proceeded to lay this out to me. And not a lot of detail, but enough. I mean, it's the only way I know this stuff. "Don't worry, Eric, everything's good. Nothing's going to change. Just want to let you know in case you hear it from someone else." At that point in time, I went from "I'll cut off a body part for this company" to "fuck you people."
Yeah.
And that never changed. That, that's why I should have left when I first thought about it's time to leave. And I talked myself out of it. But yeah. So, and look, that was however many years ago. It is what it is. I got to change my life thinking about it now. It's not even worth getting angry about now. But it's interesting, and I understand it, so I'm not complaining about this. But when people wonder why I pound on Dave Meltzer, you notice I don't pound on anybody else. And there's a lot of other Dave Meltzers out there. They don't get as much traction as he does. But when people spread rumors, distort the truth, lie by omission about things that affect people's lives, it'll get my attention. Maybe partially because of this. And again, this was one small incident. By the way, didn't change anything, right? I stayed like an idiot. I tried to make it work, but the Time Warner was piling on so hard, it was becoming more and more evident that they didn't want it to work. So no matter how hard I fought to make it work, it wasn't going to. That's the stuff that, J.J. Dillon and people like him that like to write about the business of WCW, who really had no visibility into it, very little. They know what they heard. There's a lot of people that, knew somebody higher up in WCW that had an opinion, but it wasn't, J.J. Dillon was not there. And again, I just got to remind myself that it was 20 some odd years ago. Everybody's doing what they got to do to make themselves feel okay with themselves or whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter anymore. But I do get hot when I see out and out lies and rumors that have the potential of fucking up people's lives.
Well, let's cover something else since we're going down the negativity train right now.
I'm fine. But it's the questions. If you ask me a question, I have to be honest with the answer. But I'm not negative. I'm fine. I'm good.
I'm not saying you're being negative, but I am saying, hey, they investigated you for something. They found out it was all bullshit. They made it up. Nothing happened of that. Nothing became of that, but still it had to suck to go through. And I'm sure this allegation did too. There's reports out there, rumor and innuendo, that you guys did a superstar series of home videos on guys like Sting and Ric Flair and things like that. And allegedly that could have been done more economically in-house than it was when it was farmed out to Jason Hervey in Mandalay.
All right, we're going to stop right there.
Yes.
I don't know where that came from. But again, such a perfect example of somebody writing about something they have absolutely no fucking knowledge of. Like really important pieces of the puzzle relative to the deal that I did with Jason Hervey's company. By the way, it wasn't Jason Hervey's. Jason Hervey worked for the company. It was called Mandalay Sports Entertainment Group. It was owned by a guy by the name of Peter Goober. I think he owns the Dodgers now and half a dozen minor league teams. And he was a former chairman and COO of Sony Pictures. Guy with a little bit of credibility in the entertainment industry. And I did a deal with him because Mandalay Sports was able to get a distribution deal with Universal. So yeah, a couple of guys from tech that learned how to run cameras in a trade school could have probably shot it for less money, but they couldn't have brought the distribution to the table. And one of the biggest challenges WCW had at that time, even when we were rocking and rolling, is the interdepartmental companies that we relied upon for, like I mentioned it, ironically, Turner Home Entertainment, which handled all of our videos, all of our video business. They did fuck all. They didn't do anything, but we had to use them. We couldn't go outside of them until I did. And I did because even though there were percentages in that deal that I wouldn't have had to pay if I did it internally. And by the way, doing it internally means we wouldn't have sold anything. That's how great Turner Home International or Turner Home Entertainment was with regards to our video business. They didn't even scratch the surface. They couldn't even find the surface. So yeah, I did a deal with Mandalay Sports because we had Universal home video distribution access. Oh, and Jason happened to be a friend of mine. So this is going to look like a dumb deal. It's hard not to get pissed off about this stuff.
Well, I'm glad you cleared it up because it is so nonsense and so cut and dry when you actually have all the information. But the narratives were out there, and that's why we're sort of debunking the myth of ATM Eric. I want to remind everybody that Eric cut loose Sean Waltman. Eric cut loose Steve Austin. Eric didn't give the crazy bump to Chris Jericho. There were plenty of examples of you not being ATM Eric, but perhaps none bigger than Goldberg. It's written here in May of 1999 in the Torch. Goldberg's relationship with WCW has never been worse, with his main beef being that he's overworked and underpaid relative to the other top stars. He's now playing hardball with WCW. He's changed his home phone number and isn't speaking to anyone in management. He's demanding a new contract for more money, said to be like Bret Hart money, and fewer dates on the road. His current contract reportedly pays him in the neighborhood of $800,000 per year. He's said to be willing to sit out until his demands are met. He's rumored to be taking advice from his agent, Barry Bloom, and the booker, Kevin Nash. Nash, who also employs Bloom as his agent, is being accused of playing both sides. He's giving Goldberg career advice, but is said to be bad-mouthing him to Bischoff. Also, Nash pushed Goldberg out of his scheduled Tonight Show appearance in favor of himself. Goldberg is scheduled to show up at the Tonight Show to take part in the Nash-Brett match and then have surgery on his injured knee after that. Some wrestlers believe Goldberg's injury is similar to Hulk Hogan and that it's a nagging injury that's required surgery for some time, but Goldberg has just picked an opportune time to have the procedure done. He also did suffer a minor ankle injury during the angle with Bret Hart at Slamboree. In terms of payroll, we do have the data here. Goldberg made $116,820.97. So I want to be clear, he didn't debut on TV until September of 97. So getting paid to learn how to wrestle and then wrestling 3.5 months, not bad for 117 grand in 1997. 16 matches total for that. In 1998, he did 462,000. That is the year where he beat Hulk Hogan for the world title, but boy, it more than made up for it in 1999. My man brought home $4,650,009. He got an additional $531,000 in licensing royalties, $10,000 in direct merch sales. So his total contract value for 1999 is $5,191,132, and that was 25 years ago. My God, what a gargantuan sum of money. But the idea that I just want to remind everybody, you had Goldberg on what we might call that rookie contract. When you see he starts to get hot, you on your own, without him even asking, you go to him, give him the big bump. That's the reason we see that income go from 100 to 400, because that happened midway through 1998. And so he's got the back half of that much bigger deal. And now here in 99, he's saying, nope, I'm ready for another deal. How do you remember this all coming out? And what do you make of this narrative that Kevin Nash was stirring the pot a little bit?
That sounds like, creative writing and thinking and mostly bullshit. Henry Holmes, who was Hulk Hogan's attorney, is the one that was negotiating Goldberg's deal, not Barry Bloom.
Got it.
So that report was incorrect, that aspect of it.
So it wasn't even Nash's agent. It was Hogan's agent.
It was Hogan's attorney.
Yes.
Who was also Goldberg's attorney.
Got it.
Man, if I could have derailed that train long before it, Goldberg got on it, it would have made my life easier. Look, here's what happened. Goldberg, look at where we were in 1999. Had Goldberg tried to pull this in 1998, I would have let him walk. I would have let him sit out. He could have worked his injury. I would have paid him to stay home. Made sure he didn't go anywhere, because I could have afforded it and justified it. But by 1999, to lose a guy that you spent 3 years building or 2 years building successfully was a big part of the reason we had the 1998 we did. He had a silver barrel. It was a Harvey Schiller choice. It wasn't my choice. At $5 million in 1999, that was $4 million outside of my scope of decision making. There's a fact for you that nobody writes about. Anything that I did over $1 million had to be signed off on by Turner Finance. I had authority up to $1 million. $1,001,001, it goes upstairs. And at $5 million, that was a Harvey Schiller decision. Not mine.
That's Not what everybody says. Obviously we're getting to debunk the myth of ATM Eric today. But if you're curious, Goldberg's contract value in 1999 in today's dollars would be $9.8 million, Eric. Does that surprise you? $9.8 million in 2024.
Yes, but no. If you look at this, again, this is where critical thinking and just thinking differently, not critical thinking, but just trying to picture the scene a little differently than what you just read in a newsletter or notes. By 1998, this is May 1999 we're talking about. This whole thing started in late 1998. It didn't just pop up in May, right? It had been building up to the stuff that we're talking about. But let's say that Bill Goldberg was at least, I don't know, you would know better than I, maybe top 3, third from the top in WWE today. Who would that be? Probably more than one, but it's not Cody.
CM Punk.
All
so
right.
if Cody and Roman are one, then Punk.
All right. And you've got your company today that's pretty much built around that guy.
Yeah.
And he says first of all, he made up his mind he wasn't going to work for the money that people are making on the opening match. He wants a raise. Are you going to give him that $9 million based on today's money? All in. Merchandise, guarantees, all in. Are you going to pay that guy that money? Is Tony Khan going to pay him that money? Probably would.
They 100% would. Yeah. There's guys who are making close to that now. I mean, there's guys in the $10 million range now.
Then again, it's all relative, right? Everything's bigger now. I get it. You could go down this mathematical rabbit hole and come up with just about any answer you really want to justify, because there's a lot of different answers. But if you look at it from the perspective of, okay, these are the top 2 wrestling companies. That means here's their revenue. It's not really fair to compare AEW to WWE, but let's assume that WCW was maybe 80% of WWE at that time. Let's say 70% of WWE at that time, but still wanting to stay in the game and be competitive, and your key guy wants that raise. It's going to put him in the $9 million category, which means he's going to be in the same category as whoever would be else other than CM Punk. You're going to pay him that money if the company's built around him. You don't have any choice.
I wanted to ask you, does this $800,000 number sound right? I mean, it's written here in the torch that Goldberg's making around 800 before he signs the new deal. And that wasn't what the data necessarily supported, which made me think maybe it happened midway through the year. It's not like it was a January 1st sort of thing. But Bob Ryder even went on WCW Live and he referenced that $800,000 range on WCW Live, which was really the first podcast that anybody listened to. I mean, you don't get enough credit for that either. WCW Live. Does 800,000 sound right to you?
I don't know. It sounds like the way that the numbers are, put together for you there to work off of. It sounds like there's some averages in there that, or maybe not. I don't know. I'm not looking at a spreadsheet, so it's hard for me to remember off the top of my head. I don't remember that number, but it doesn't mean that it's not right.
His new contract was effective July 1st, 1999. It was $2.5 million per year for the first 3 years and $3.5 million in year 4. Of course, he did get some of that upside.
Well, and that makes that conversation we just had a little more interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of would you make that decision or not?
There's no doubt. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I wanted to ask you, though, do you remember this story of he wasn't communicating with management? He changed his home phone number. Does that sound right?
Yeah, because he was, oh God, he was miserable to work with. I get PTSD thinking about it. He was such a Barry Bloom. I refused to talk to him. That's why I dealt with I never dealt with Barry. I dealt with Henry. It was so tough. And even Henry and I mean, Janie Engel, by the way, I talked to Janie Engel for the longest time last night. She went,
How's she doing?
She's doing great. She's happy as hell. She's thinking about coming up here next summer. And
Oh, great.
she actually wants me to let you know that, hey, if you need any help with StarCast, she's happy to help you out.
Hell yeah, that's awesome, dude. How about that? Janie Engel. That's a name we hadn't heard in a while.
We talked for quite a while last night.
That's awesome.
Where was I? I forgot.
You were talking about, you're so heated with you and Henry that Janie would hear.
Oh no, it was horrible. There were times when Janie would like come in and close my door because I was motherfucking people all the time. I mean, it was ugly. It was the ugliest I can remember ever talking to another human being. Then Henry would hang up on me, and then he'd call me back 5 minutes later, scream at me, and I'd hang up at him. It was silly. I may have told you the story. I won't belabor this, but Henry had a little bit of an ego. I mean, Henry was a first of all, he's a great guy, but he was a very powerful attorney in Hollywood, sports attorney, celebrity attorney. He had major league clients, heavy A-listers in the sports world, actors all over the place, right? And he was good. He did the highest level deals, but he had a little bit of a Napoleon complex. He was a little tiny fella. And when he walked in the room, man, he wanted you to know he was there. And he had this pattern of anytime he was in a meeting with more than 2 or 3 people, he'd walk in, and as everybody's kind of making nice and getting to know each other and just getting the niceties out of the way before they got into business, bringing up general conversations. And somehow or another, Henry Holmes was always able to steer the conversation. You could ask him about the weather, and he would steer that question and somehow relate it to the George Foreman grill and tell you the story about the George Foreman grill and how much money he made for George Foreman. And he tried to get it for Hulk Hogan, but Hulk didn't answer the phone. So I did the deal with my other client, George Foreman. Tells a story every time. So because of the tension between us, like there was no let's meet in a restaurant or let's go have a drink together and work this out. We'd gotten so far past that. We would only meet in public with other people present. I'm not shitting you. That's how bad it got. So I was coming to LA to do something, and Henry and I decided, okay, we should have a meeting. Well, I don't have an office in LA, and Henry was in Malibu on that day. So I said, okay, why don't we meet at my agent's, CAA, one of the biggest, most prestigious agents in Hollywood. I knew Henry would feel good about that. I said, I got some agents there. Why don't we meet there? And we did. So I got there about an hour early, and I told my agent, I said, look, here's what I want to do. This guy's going to walk in here, and he's going to tell this story. And I want to be sitting at the table with about as many of you guys as I can get. I don't care if they're fucking interns, as long as they're wearing a tie and look like they could be an agent or an attorney. I want them sitting at the table. And I said, here's what's going to happen. This guy's going to come in. He's going to command the room. He's going to get all the attention. He's going to tell the story. I don't care what other questions you ask him. He's going to tell you this story. And when he does, I want us to all bust out laughing. And that's exactly what happened, to the T. To the T. Henry got so pissed. It was so embarrassed. He got up and walked away. He never had the meeting. It was awesome. But it's just the shit that's how bad that negotiation went. And I'm laughing about it now, but it was not pleasant, because not only was I dealing with the guy that I thought I was being fair to. I upped him whenever it was, however it was. I upped him before I had to. I was doing the right thing by him, and I would have done the right thing by him. I tried to create parity amongst top guys. Obviously criticized for it a lot, but it's the only way that I thought I could manage talent. You can't have, people that have been basically doing the same thing at the same level for the most part for a long time and pay one guy more than this guy just because you can get away with it, like J.J. Dillon would. It sounds good on paper, but once this guy talks to this guy, you got a shit show on your hands. So, yeah, that was an ugly one. And honestly, it got to the point because the number was so big. I went to Harvey. I said, Harvey, you do whatever you want. It's not my call. I can go either way. My answer is it's going to hurt us if we don't have them. That's going to hurt. But it's your decision. And the fact that I said it's going to hurt us if we don't have them was pretty fucking obvious. But that was the context. And it was shitty.
I can't wait for us to talk about.
We stayed friends after that, though. Well, of course, I paid him $5 million. We better stay friends.
Well, it's just too bad that Blue Chew wasn't around back then, because maybe you could have gotten it off your mind. Blue Chew is going to leave a lasting impression, one that's and you're going to be fucking harder than Henry Holmes negotiating for Bill Goldberg with Blue Chew. It's an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. That's right. Hit her with your spear. Hit her with that jackhammer too. Then get on a big streak. The process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all online. That means there's no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night. You can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And Eric's told me, and I have this on good authority, and I'm definitely not just making it up here on the fly, that sometimes around Halloween, in order to celebrate Halloween havoc, Eric Bischoff gets J.J. Dillon and a few of his security guard friends to come on down to the ranch there in Cody, Wyoming. They start playing Goldberg's theme, and then he has Dave Silva and Dave Silva's son, who has a mustache now, hold up a couple of sparklers as Eric Bischoff can finish chomping down on his Blue Chew, stand right there in the sparklers, get standing at full attention and yell, "Who's next?"
Oh, God.
Get there with their finish. It's the spear. It's the jackhammer. It's the Blue Chew story. Second verse, same as the first. That's right. You're going to go on a streak, just one after another. Blue Chew wants men rock hard. That's what they told me. That's the mission. They're not going to stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, until every tent is pitched, until every rod is raised. Discover your options at bluechew.com. You've been promising her Goldberg. Don't hit her with your Gilberg. We got a special deal for our audience. Try Blue Chew free. Just pay $5 shipping. That's all it takes at checkout. And you're hooked up at bluechew.com. That's bluechew.com to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring 83 Weeks and Eric's Wiener Ritual with the security and the sparklers.
By the way, ironically, I was going through a file that I keep in the kitchen near a little stand that I kind of use as a desk occasionally. And I looked underneath, there's like three shelves. I looked at the bottom shelf, there's a folder there that I hadn't looked at in, I don't know, decades. So I opened it up and there's a bunch of old WCW stuff in there. Emails, memos, shit. One of the things in there, and it just occurred to me as we were talking about this, relating to my limit of $1 million, and then the process of what anybody had to do if they wanted to spend over $1 million in the committee of people that it had to go through, or the process, I should say, that it had to go through. I just found a copy of that about 2 weeks ago. It just occurred to me as you were talking about Blue Chew.
Well, how about that?
So if anybody doubts the veracity of my version of all this, just reach out.
Let's talk about some of the things that's written in the torch here. In June of 99, we know the new contract is going to get executed July 1st. But before we got there, on June 2nd, my man Bill Goldberg gets on the radio and he says, "I hope retirement is not the case, but it becomes a reality. Without getting myself into trouble, it's a part of negotiating. First of all, my disgruntlement, the onset of it, was not brought about because of contractual differences. It was something totally different. It has to do with why I'm hobbling around right now. It's part of all business. You have to take your peaks and valleys in negotiations. All I can say is I'd like for them to open their eyes and realize this doesn't come around every day. As I said in USA Today, I want nothing but to be compensated in comparison to my worth in the company. I hope everyone in the world hears this. What I'm going through right now is no reflection upon anything associated with greed or anything like that. It's just a reality. It's not that I'm turning my back like a baseball player making millions of dollars and wanting millions more. It's just a different story, and I want everyone to understand that. His comments indicate that his dispute with management was instigated by his ignored request to be given time off to get his injured knee fixed before it required major surgery. Regarding his winning streak and the intrigue associated with his rise to prominence, Goldberg said, "The direction that I was headed was one that had a lot of mystique associated with it. It could have been legendary. That chance only comes once in a lifetime, especially for me in the wrestling business. All I can say is good luck finding the next guy." And then you went on WCW Live and had a different take here with Bob Ryder. You said, "We're not negotiating currently with Bill Goldberg." Again, there's a lot of misinformation out there regarding that. Bill Goldberg is in the first of a 3 or 4 year deal that was renegotiated about a year ago. Bill underwent knee surgery about a week ago, as a matter of fact, and he's rehabbing. He's anxious to get back in the ring. So listen, Goldberg saying one thing on the radio, you're trying to keep this train on the tracks when you're on WCW Live. But when Bill's saying it's not like a baseball player who's making millions of dollars, who's now renegotiating to get millions more, how isn't exactly like that, Eric? It sounds exactly like that.
I guess it's all relative, isn't it? Depends on who you are and what your perspective is. I mean, look, Bill was doing what Bill felt he should do. I mean, Bill's never been one to pull punches in or out of the ring. You know, he's going to let you know what he thinks. And he didn't have he was not inhibited at all. I think it was unfair to the company. It was certainly unfair to me. Like I said, I had every intention of taking care of him. There was no arguing his value. I guess we probably could. I'm sure Bill had a much higher opinion of his value and how he got there than we did. But we both knew and agreed he deserved to make more money based on what we were asking of him at that time and what the people around him from a parity perspective were making. He was not wrong in that respect. Was he making as much as Hogan? No. Is it realistic given the entire situation, the equity in Hogan at that time, that he should? We can argue it. I'm sure if you're Bill Goldberg, you would have any problem arguing it, or Henry Holmes or Barry Bloom. And to a degree, I probably would agree with it, at least part of it. But then there's the practical business side of things. He was forcing a renegotiation by threatening a walkout because he wasn't making as much as Hulk Hogan. That's what he was doing. You can spin it any way you want and talk about your sore knee and not getting time off and not being treated well. You can do that. We hear a lot about that, don't we? Even to this day. You can spout off publicly. Sometimes, Ray Phoenix, you're forced to pull your shit down because you're exposing yourself legally, which means you're losing leverage, which is not a good thing. But that stuff went on back then too. Some guys did it more. Some guys were way more comfortable negotiating in public than they were negotiating in an office. It was easier for him. Ric Flair did the same thing. When Ric Flair had his issues and sued me and all that horrible stuff that was going on, it wasn't Ric Flair necessarily directly, but his attorneys had no problem getting people on their side, front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and telling Rick's side of the story. It works. To a large degree, Bill's strategy did work because it worked on Harvey Schiller.
Yeah.
Harvey Schiller was the one, and others at his level, made that decision. And that press that Bill did, as uncomfortable as it was for me, arguably it worked.
before he actually signs the deal, he does make an appearance for you guys at the Toy Fair in New York. And allegedly, he's heard over telling people, well, it's inevitable I'm going to wrestle Steve Austin in 3 years. Like he was at least espousing in front of licensees and brand partners, oh, I'm going to the WWF in 3 years. This is all a negotiation tactic, is it not?
Yeah, and it's shitty in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to disagree there, but I just want to remind everybody, no matter what you think of Eric Bischoff, and Lord, I know my man has earned some critics over the years. By the way, he doesn't give one fuck. He's completely out of fuck to give. But the idea that you're ATM Eric, but here you are pushing back on this arbitrary raise for Bill Goldberg. That just flies in the face of that. But I know that other people would point to silly things like when you gave Master P's bodyguard, Swole, a $350,000 a year contract and a $50,000 signing bonus. I know people are critical of that who are quote unquote in the wrestling bubble, but it's hard to contextualize even now, unless you were there at the time, just how big in the space No Limit Records was and how many #1 albums they had and what their penetration and influence was in that market. And if you thought you could rub the WCW brand up against that brand for roughly $30,000 a month, I know that sounds like a lot if it's your household income, but for a company that's got a top line gross of millions and millions and millions of dollars, it's not that crazy. But when people sort of point to Swole as an example of ATM Eric, how do you respond to that?
It's a little bit like the Kiss deal. By the way, I found that deal too. So if anybody's looking for that, I found him. I don't know why I kept that shit, but I found the Kiss deal.
We got to get it up on adfreeshows.com. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean the merchandise side of it and percentages and everything. The whole thing is right there.
We got to see that.
The opportunity to grow your audience, to attract an audience that's not already watching your show. In this case, the hip hop audience, because there was nobody bigger at that time than Master P. Well, there may have been bigger, but he was as big as some of the top performers, artists in the hip hop community. And he wasn't just an artist. He had a tremendous amount of influence. So did we want a larger component of our audience to be made up of that hip hop culture and market? Hell yeah. Still do today, don't we? People are still marketing hard towards that portion of the audience that is represented by the hip hop culture. It's big money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would look odd to somebody that has never been in a situation like that where you go, wow, hey, if I make this investment, there's a chance, not a guarantee, by the way, there's a chance that I could grow and gain some momentum within a segment of the market that I don't already have. Is that a good investment? Is that a good risk? Because every investment is a risk. Is that a good risk? If it is, we take it. If it's not, we don't. And we took it. And I think I would take it again today, in a similar situation.
Do you think you sort of looked at the Swole deal like he was a part of the package deal for Master P, much like Lanny Poffo?
No question.
Savage? Yeah.
There was no question.
There's payroll records out there because I know that everybody gets excited about the 350, but we've seen payroll records out there that say that Swole actually only got paid $30,890. And he's cut within a few months. So this narrative that it was 350, maybe that's been debunked by payroll records. But the guy who played Swole, he told Guy Evans in the Nitro book that his lawyers got involved and he wound up being paid out the balance of his contract. And I've heard from people who used to be in the newsletter business that if you sued WCW for a certain amount of money, as long as it didn't meet that threshold, they just pay it out. It wasn't worth it. Do you think that Swole got paid through the attorneys like that, or is this just a wrestler tall tale?
I don't know. I wouldn't have been involved in a discussion of a buyout like that. That would have gone to Turner Legal. I I might have been told about it after it was all over, but maybe not even given any detail. So it doesn't sound familiar to me. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just telling you, I don't remember it, mostly because I wouldn't have been involved in it.
Here's one that I want to ask you about, and we've never really talked about this, but Kevin Wackles, who we knew in the WWF as Nails, or if you were an old school AWA fan, you knew as Mr. Magnificent Kevin Kelly. He was paid almost $250,000 across 1998 and the first half of 1999 for having exactly one match before he wound up being released. I can only hope that one day people do this same level of dollars per match research on the current product in 2024, because that would be very interesting to see.
Trust me, Conrad, people already are.
What really happened with Kevin Wackles, the former Mr. Magnificent Kevin Kelly? How did he wind up being under contract with WCW for $250,000 across 98 and 99 and only wrestle one time? Was he injured or was there something else?
I'm only hesitating because I honestly can't remember. I mean, I would have approved him coming in at that time, and certainly aware of him because I, was familiar with him from the AWA before I even got into the business, and familiar with his role in WWE. There might have been a plan for him, and hey, there's a possibility I wanted to do some kind of a silly, spoof on his situation with Vince, because I was doing silly shit like that back then. It was kind of like giving away finishes. It got people talking. It got people watching. Maybe I could see me, saying, okay, let's bring him in, pay him $250 a year. We're going to shoot this angle with him, and maybe decided against it. What year was this? Do you know?
1999.
99. Yeah, I don't know what that would have been, man. I can't tell you. I wish I had something to defend myself with, but I don't.
Well, you'll never be caught without great seats. You won't have to defend those seats anymore, thanks to our friends at Game Time. I'm such a big believer in Game Time. We've been talking about it for years here on the show, and it's because it really, really works. And if you haven't downloaded the app already, what are you waiting for? Go download the Game Time app right now, create an account, and use our code WEEKS. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account at Game Time. Just download the Game Time app and create that account, and then type in the code WEEKS. That's WEEKS. You'll get $20 off. Here's why Eric does this. Whenever he's traveling, he goes to a new place if he's got a little downtime, because when you live in a third world town like Cody,
easy.
Well, I'm just saying, you live 3 worlds away. It takes 2 days to get anywhere from where you are.
That's true. That part's true.
So why not pull up your Game Time app and see what's going on in your neck of the woods? Not just wrestling tickets, but you can get those too. What about comedy? What about theater? What about concerts? It's all there. And Game Time Picks has made it even easier this holiday season. They filter out all the fluff and just show you the incredible deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through all the different tickets. I'm a big believer in Game Time Picks. They eliminate all the guesswork, and they've even got all-in pricing. You can toggle that feature on so you see the total right up front. No surprises at checkout. The Game Time Picks, though, you want to talk about a lifesaver? I was able to use this recently for some basketball tickets for my cousins. Dude, it is a home run. They went on the same day as the event. That's what's great about this. I even saw Sean Rouse Sapp this past weekend in Dallas. He was going to go see the Bengals play the Cowboys. I made sure to tell him, download the Game Time app, use the code WEEKS, and you're going to get the best deal you've ever gotten. Here's the other thing I told Sean Rouse Sapp. They got the lowest price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Not only that, they even give you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Eliminate all the guesswork. Give yourself the peace of mind. Get the best deal possible on the best seats possible with Game Time. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time by downloading the Game Time app. Create that account. Use the code WEEKS. Bam, there's $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code WEEKS. That's WEEKS. And you'll get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Eric, the biggest piece of all of the ATM Eric stuff is about Hulk Hogan's contract. And we're not talking about the 1994 contract. We're talking about the much more lucrative 1998 contract. It was actually made public during the racial discrimination lawsuits that happened back in 2000. So the data we have is for 99. He would have signed this deal in May of 98. We don't cover all of 2000 in the data. The document shows it was roughly generated in mid 2000. And for 1999, it shows that Hogan made $3.7 million in payroll, $833,000 in licensing royalties, and $20,000 in direct merchandise sale royalties for a total of $4.6 million. But in the contract, he made a minimum guarantee of $4.05 million in pay-per-view payoffs, and that's more than is listed at his payroll. So it almost implies that payroll is separate. It maybe represents his Nitro and Thunder payoffs, which were $25,000 per show, or 25% of the gross after-tax arena ticket revenues, whichever was greater. Between those figures and $240,000 a year as a guarantee for wearing NWO merch in public, it looks like he was making about $8.9 million a year in 1999. That's what we've been able to put together with the old records. Does that sound crazy or out of whack to you that in 1999, Hogan might have made nearly $9 million?
I'm not sure. I would have to see the contract. I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying, but we're assuming some facts here, I think.
We are.
And I don't think that those facts are really accurate. And if they're not, it changes everything. Not a little bit.
Let me help you out while you think about this, by the way. I just want to help you out because the Atlanta Business Journal does a story about WCW in 1999. And in that story, it said that you expected revenues to hit the $500 million mark. So if that's true, and Hogan or the company generated $500 million and Hogan made $8.9 million, that would just be 1.8% of company revenue. Now, by comparison, sort of peak WWF, which would have been 1989 for Hulk Hogan, he was paid 5% of the after-tax gate on house shows, which worked out to about 4.6% of the pre-tax gate. That all goes back to Bruno's deal way back when. I'm saying all that to say the only payoff that we have ever been disclosed for Hulk Hogan pay-per-views in the WWF is from the Ultimate Warrior lawsuit, talking about SummerSlam 91. And Hulk got $90,000 for that show. The pay-per-view, SummerSlam 91, sold 405,000 buys at a price of $27.95. And with the WWF getting roughly 40% of that, the pay-per-view revenue was likely a little over $4.5 million. And that means Hogan's payoff was about 2%. So I'm saying all that to say, for the people who jump up and down and say, oh, Eric way overpaid Hulk Hogan, if you take the 1989 numbers that we know based on the split, and then you apply it to the 1991 payoffs, you actually paid him less percentage-wise than Vince McMahon.
Where were you when I needed you?
I'm just saying, like, if we're really trying to have context and compare apples to apples, I know people get upset that Hulk Hogan makes so much doggone money. Don't be upset that he's been able to negotiate a good deal for himself, not just with Eric, but he set the precedent with Vince. Do you think that he showed up to WCW and knew what to ask for as far as percentage of gates? No, that precedent had been set before, and he wanted to see if he could get in the same range, and he did. I just find it interesting that this narrative is out there like, Hulk, man, he really took you to the cleaners. But percentage-wise, did he really? I don't think so.
No, and that's kind of what I was, and obviously I don't have these numbers in front of me. I'm just working off memory. And the challenge that I'm facing, again, I'm not saying that the $8 million is wrong. It's just that there were some complexities regarding guarantees. So, for example, do the numbers that you have, do they reflect numbers that were actually paid, or do they reflect the face value of the contracts? Because if it's money that's actually paid, there's no question about it.
Right.
Which is it?
Well, no, that's what we ran through. Those are the details from his contract, and then we actually gave you the total payroll. So the payroll number would show 3.756228 in payroll, 832,988 in licensing royalties, 20,846 in direct merch. So the total for payroll is all of those line items is $4,610,062.
See, that's
But hang on, here's where I'm getting to. There's 4.05 million guaranteed in pay-per-view payoffs. Now I know we're splitting hairs here, but I'm wondering, do you think that is on a Turner Home Entertainment contract because the pay-per-view was a separate discussion?
no, I don't think so. I
Okay.
don't think so. My only question is that number being duplicated in a way or accounted for twice? And that goes to the language in the contract. So
Well,
in
what
other
I'm
words,
saying, the
did he
language
have-
in the contract said a minimum guarantee of 4.05 million in pay-per-view payoffs, but his total payroll is only 3.7.
so then there would have had to, we would have had to meet his minimum guarantee.
Yes, but I'm wondering, do you think it was in addition to, because we've heard that the pay-per-views were often through Turner Home Entertainment, which would have been maybe a different
That is
deal.
not that is not true.
Okay.
I mean, yes, the pay-per-views were offered through Turner Home Entertainment, but we didn't account for any of Hogan's compensation through Turner Home Entertainment. We didn't allocate any of his compensation to any other division of the company, and that's what that would be. That would be an example of an intercompany allocation where WCW would benefit. We were often in intercompany allocation transactions, but we were on the receiving end, not on the beneficial end.
Well, let me explain this. If the number is true, that it was payroll plus pay-per-view, and it really was around 8.9, $1,999 at 8.9 million represents nearly $17 million in 2024. So in today's dollars, it would be 16.8 million, which again sounds like a crazy number. But I want to remind you, if Hogan was being paid 2% in the WWF and he's getting paid 1.8% here in WCW, Eric still got off cheaper, even at what would have been today 16.8 million. But if what you're saying is true and pay-per-view was not set aside, then you got Hogan for roughly half of what Vince did, which is just crazy. This whole ATM Eric thing, either way, does not hold water to me.
No, and I'm gonna have to get to the bottom of the Hogan thing because it's very confusing to me. Because we didn't, not for Hogan, not for Bill Goldberg, not for anybody else, we didn't have different sets of books. As fucked up as whatever anybody wants to say about it, WCW's accounting, it was one set of books for WCW. And we didn't take Hulk's contract and enter into one contract for WCW and one contract for Turner Home Entertainment. He did have a minimum guarantee, and I would have to understand the relationships of those two categories that you explained. It's not clear to me right now. It could have been a $4 million figure. If that's what his minimum guarantee was in 1999, we weren't making a boatload of money over minimum guarantee. I mean, I can't see that there would have been any more than that. But again, without seeing the contract, it's really hard to guess, especially 20 some odd years later.
Well, I got to think that there is a separate set of books somewhere. Maybe it's a different, and I hear what you're saying, but when we were able to see the data from these racial discrimination lawsuits, they have no income in there for the Ultimate Warrior. And we know the Ultimate Warrior didn't just show up because he really wanted to wrestle Hulk Hogan. So he got paid somewhere. And so maybe the hypothesis that's out there is perhaps he was paid through Turner Home Entertainment and not just the regular WCW.
See, that this is a wrestling version of a conspiracy theory.
Okay.
Or perhaps the answer is you don't have all the fucking records and they're not accurate. This is like a journal constitution. This isn't like an audit. These are not audited numbers.
Well, no,
this isn't audited information. So we may be having this discussion based on incomplete or inaccurate information or partial information.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a chance that Turner didn't actually submit all the records for the lawsuit.
Or they did, and it didn't get copied properly for the purposes of the Atlanta Journal Constitution.
No, the AJC, that was a story. That's a totally different. You're conflating two things. We had the lawsuit for the racial discrimination stuff that disclosed all the income. But I'm saying the way I started doing percentages is based on an interview in the AJC that said WCW's top line was going to be 500 million. So if we went with that number, that's how I just derived the 1.8% relative to Vince's 2. That's all.
All right.
The whole ATM Eric thing, though, we would hear things like, the amount of money that Ric Flair was being paid relative to the amount of money that Stevie Ray was being paid and things like that. Even in, the year 2000, after you're not in charge anymore, Ric Flair's deal is renegotiated to $500,000 a year plus $4,000 per house show, $5,000 per TV shoot, and $12,000 per pay-per-view. But before that, he was making around $750,000 a year. Even with this new structure, it's not like it's that big of a cut. So you're acquiescing to certain demands, but when you really tally it up and actually put pen to paper, it's hard to really buy into this narrative that ATM Eric was a real thing. I would encourage everyone to check out the link into the description for today's show. It's got all the information so you can see all these tables and see exactly who was making what and where. We've got a bunch of questions that we would love to get to. We're running short on time today, though, so maybe we'll do those as a bonus over at 83weeks.com, which is where you need to be. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications bell, and do it right now, because this Saturday night, immediately following the return of Saturday night's main event, Eric Bischoff and I are going to be here taking your questions, getting your feedback, seeing what you like, seeing what you hated, and we can't wait to talk about it all. The good, the bad, the ugly. So go right now, hit that subscribe button, 83weeks.com, and we'll see you guys this Saturday night right here on 83weeks.com.
Give the ultimate gift to the wrestling fan in your life this holiday season. The gift of ad-free shows. Head over to adfreegift.com now to purchase an ad-free show subscription for a friend or loved one. The best value in wrestling podcasts with several plans to choose from. Starting as low as just $9 a month. You're gifting early ad-free access to Conrad Thompson's weekly podcast, plus access to the full podcast archive library and access to the Patreon, where you can join the community chat and submit your questions for the shows. Want more? Plans starting at $29 a month get access to over 100,000 hours of other exclusive content from legends like The Godfather, Tully Blanchard, Lex Luger, David Crockett, Downtown Bruno, and many more. Plus, interactive Q&As and watch-alongs with your favorite podcast hosts and Hall of Famers. Let's hear from some of our ad-free show's family members.
Listening to podcasts without ads is pretty cool, but listening to bonus exclusive content is even better.
AFS has meant so much to me through the moments and memories created.
My friendships that I've made so far, it's been one heck of an experience.
Not only do you get great content and so much historical information, but you're also part of a community here, even more so a family.
So many different walks of life being brought together by one commonality of wrestling.
The community and the family feel with all the members who have been very welcoming.
How many places do you get to go to actually interview stars like Jeff Jarrett and Eric Bischoff?
When I joined ad-free shows, Eric actually called me to thank me personally. That moment made me realize just how special this community is.
And it's a global family.
It's a family that I never dreamed of having. It's been a heck of a ride, and can't wait for more to come.
Thank you, ad-free shows, for celebrating wrestling's greatest era and for making podcasts that are just too sweet. And just know that you've got a member for life.
Visit adfreegift.com today and gift an ad-free show's membership to the wrestling fan in your life this Christmas.